He is just a useless husband. My wife screamed those words across the courtroom, her finger pointing at me like a loaded gun. The sound of her voice cracked the heavy silence of the room. I sat at the defendant's table, my hands folded calmly over my cane, wearing the same gray suit I had owned for 10 years. It was frayed at the cuffs. To everyone in that room, I looked exactly like what she described. A tired 70-year-old black man who had given up on life. A burden. Beside my wife, her lawyer, a man named Baxter with a suit that cost more than my car, smirked. He thought this was a slam dunk. He thought he was stripping a senile old man of his last few pennies. In the gallery, my son-in-law Hunter leaned back in his chair with a toothpick in his mouth, looking at me with pure, unfiltered contempt. He had won. Or so he thought. The judge, a woman with sharp eyes who had been reading a sealed file for the last 10 minutes, finally looked up. She didn't look at my wife. She didn't look at me. She looked directly at Baxter. She took off her glasses slowly. The silence in the room shifted. It went from awkward to suffocating. "Counselor," the judge asked, her voice dangerously low, "you have filed for a division of assets based on the premise that Mr. King has contributed nothing to the marital estate for 40 years. Is that correct?" "Absolutely, Your Honor," Baxter replied, puffing out his chest. "Mr. King is a liability. He has no income. He has no assets." The judge let out a breath that sounded like a laugh. She opened the file again and tapped a document with her index finger. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "Tell me." "Counselor," the judge said, leaning forward, "do you really not know who this man is?" Baxter froze. His smile faltered. He looked at me, then back at the judge. "Excuse me, Your Honor." The judge held up a document stamped with the city seal. "This man is Thaddeus King. And if you truly believe he is useless, then you might want to ask yourself why the city pays him $400,000 a month just to keep your toilet flushing." My wife's face went pale. The color drained from her skin so fast I thought she might faint. Hunter's toothpick fell out of his mouth. "My name is Thaddeus King. I am 70 years old. For 40 years I let my family believe I was a simple man who liked to tinker with old pipes in the garage. They didn't know I held the patents that keep this entire city from drowning in its own waste. They didn't know I was a ghost billionaire, and they certainly didn't know that the war they started was about to end with me burning their world to the ground. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to family who underestimated your worth. To understand how we ended up in that courtroom, you have to go back 3 months. To the night my heart finally stopped beating for the woman I had loved for 4 decades. It was our 40th wedding anniversary. The restaurant was Hunter's choice, of course. It was a place called the Obsidian, all glass walls, dim lighting, and menus that didn't list prices. The kind of place where a bottle of water costs $15. I hated it. I felt suffocated in my old suit, the fabric scratching against my neck. I sat at the head of the table, but I felt invisible. Yvonne sat to my right. She looked beautiful, I have to give her that. She was wearing a gold dress that shimmered under the chandeliers. She had spent 3 hours getting ready, fussing over her hair, complaining that her jewelry wasn't flashy enough. Across from us sat our daughter Gabrielle and her husband Hunter. Hunter was 32, white handsome in a slimy way, and loud. He took up too much space. He ordered champagne without asking the price, laughing loudly at his own jokes, treating the waiters like they were invisible servants. He was a real estate developer, or at least that is what he told everyone. I knew he was a con artist with a credit score lower than my shoe size, but tonight was about peace. Tonight was about Yvonne. I had spent 6 months making her gift. I am not a man who buys things from stores. I work with my hands. I went to my workshop, a small shed in the backyard that Hunter called the junk pile, and I selected a piece of rare African blackwood I had been saving for 20 years. I carved it by hand. I sanded it until it felt like silk. I inlaid it with tiny veins of silver and mother of pearl, creating a pattern that mimicked the constellations on the night we met. It was a necklace. It wasn't shiny like diamonds, but it carried my soul in every curve. When the dessert arrived, I cleared my throat. The table went quiet, mostly because Hunter had a mouthful of steak. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small, simple wooden box. "Yvonne," I said, my voice trembling slightly. 40 years. It has been a long road. I made this for you." I slid the box across the white tablecloth. Yvonne picked it up. She opened it. She stared at the wooden necklace. For a second, just a second, I hoped she would see the work, the hours, the love. But then Hunter snorted. He actually laughed. "What is that, Dad?" Hunter asked, wiping grease from his lip. "Did you whittle that on the porch while yelling at kids to get off your lawn?" Yvonne didn't defend me. She didn't smile. She looked at the necklace with a mixture of confusion and embarrassment. She touched the wood with the tip of her manicured fingernail as if it might be dirty. "It is quaint, Thaddeus," she said, her voice flat. "Thank you." She didn't put it on. She closed the box and set it down next to the salt shaker. "That is cute," Hunter boomed, reaching into his own jacket pocket. "But let's see if we can do a little better for the lady of the hour." He pulled out a key fob. It was heavy, sleek, and branded with a luxury car logo. He tossed it onto the table. It landed with a heavy clatter right in front of Yvonne. "Happy anniversary, Mom," Hunter said, grinning like a shark. "There is a brand new Lexus SUV waiting with the valet. Lease is paid up for 2 years. You deserve to ride in style, not in Dad's rusty old truck." Yvonne gasped. Her hands flew to her mouth. She grabbed the keys, clutching them to her chest like they were a holy relic. "Oh, Hunter," she squealed, tears actually forming in her eyes. "You shouldn't have. This is amazing. Look at this, Thaddeus. Alexis." She looked at me then. Her eyes were shining, but not for me. They were shining for the metal and plastic in her hand. She looked from the keys to the wooden box, and the comparison was clear in her eyes. One was value, the other was trash. I drank my water. It tasted like ash. I knew Hunter didn't have the money for that car. I knew he had probably put the down payment on a credit card he couldn't pay off. But I said nothing. I just nodded. "That is a very generous gift, Hunter," I said quietly. "You bet it is," Hunter said, winking at Gabrielle. "Someone has to take care of this family, right, Thaddeus? Since you are retired and all." He emphasized the word retired like it was a disease. I looked at Gabrielle, my own daughter. She looked down at her plate, unable to meet my eyes. She knew better. She knew I worked hard, but she was too weak to stand up to him. The rest of the dinner was a blur. They talked about money. They talked about vacations they wanted to take. They talked about renovating our house. "You know, Dad," Hunter said, leaning in the smell of expensive scotch on his breath. "That house of yours is sitting on a gold mine. The market is hot. If you sold it, gave me the capital to invest, I could double our money in 3 months. We could get you and Mom a nice condo. Something small, low maintenance." I looked at him. I looked at the greed dripping from his pores. "The house is not for sale," I said. Yvonne frowned. "Don't be stubborn, Thaddeus. Hunter is a businessman. He knows these things. The roof is leaking, the pipes are old, you can't fix them forever." "I can fix anything," I said. Hunter rolled his eyes. "Right. The master handyman. Look, we can talk about it later. Let's enjoy the night." We went home. Yvonne insisted on driving the new car, even though it was just a rental dressed up as a gift. I drove my old pickup truck behind them, watching their taillights, feeling a coldness spreading in my chest that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. When we got back to the house I had bought 30 years ago, the house where we raised Gabrielle, the house I had modified with my own hands to be the most energy-efficient structure in the state, Yvonne went straight to the bedroom. She was humming. She was happy. I stayed in the kitchen to clean up. They had left a mess before we went out. Coffee cups, wrappers, clutter. I started wiping down the counters, my movements mechanical. I went to the trash can to throw away a paper towel. I stepped on the pedal and the lid popped open. And there it was, resting on top of a pile of lobster shells they had brought home in a doggy bag and discarded, covered in red cocktail sauce and coffee grounds, was my wooden box. It wasn't even closed properly. The necklace had spilled out. The African blackwood, which I had sanded for 40 hours until it felt like skin, was now smeared with grease. The silver inlay was dull under a layer of half-eaten food. I stopped breathing. The kitchen was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator I had repaired last week. I stood there staring into the abyss of that trash can. She hadn't just forgotten it. She hadn't left it on the table. She had brought it home, walked into the kitchen, and thrown it away. She had looked at the symbol of my 40 years of devotion, decided it was garbage, and discarded it like a used napkin. I reached into the trash. My hand shook not from age, but from a rage so cold it burned. I picked up the necklace. I wiped the sauce off with my thumb. The wood was still beautiful beneath the filth. It was durable. It was strong. Just like me. I walked to the sink and turned on the water. I washed the necklace carefully using dish soap to cut the grease. I dried it with a clean towel. I put it in my pocket. I walked down the hall to the bedroom. Yvonne was sitting at her vanity taking off her earrings. She smiled at me through the mirror, high on the adrenaline of the new car. "Did you lock the back door, Thaddeus?" she asked, not turning around. I looked at the back of her neck. I looked at the woman I had built a universe for. "I locked it," I said. I didn't ask her why she threw it away. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Because in that moment, standing in the doorway of the bedroom I had shared with her for half a century, I realized something. My wife didn't exist. The woman I loved was a figment of my imagination. This woman sitting here was a stranger who loved things, not people. And looking at her, I felt the last tether snap. I touched the wooden necklace in my pocket. It was hard. It was solid. If they wanted money, I thought I would show them money. But they weren't going to like the price. Hunter wanted to play the big shot. He wanted to talk about investments and assets. He had no idea he was standing on top of a volcano, poking it with a stick. I turned off the light and went to sleep on the couch. I didn't sleep, actually. I lay there in the dark, listening to the house settle, and I started to plan. I wasn't Thaddeus the handyman anymore. I was Thaddeus King, the architect of this city's veins, and I was about to shut off the water. The invasion began at 8 in the morning sharp. I was drinking my coffee in the kitchen, the mug warming my hands, when the front door burst open. Hunter walked in first, carrying 2 large designer suitcases. He didn't knock. He didn't say hello. He just kicked the door wider with his heel and shouted back to the driveway, "Come on, Gabrielle, it is not that heavy." My daughter followed him in, looking exhausted and carrying a box of shoes. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Yvonne was right behind them, directing traffic like a general on a battlefield. "Put those in the master suite," she told Hunter. Then she turned to me. "Thaddeus, move your things out of the study. Hunter needs a home office if he is going to manage our investments." I stood up slowly. The study was not just a room. It was where I had designed the city's flood control system in 1985. It was where I had drafted the schematics for the subway ventilation. My life was in that room. "I am not moving my things," I said calmly. Hunter dropped the suitcases in the hallway with a loud thud. He walked over to me, towering over my frame. He smelled of expensive cologne and arrogance. "Look, Thaddeus, we are doing you a favor. We are moving in to take care of you and Mom. The least you can do is make space for the people actually generating income in this family." Before I could answer, he walked past me and into the study. I heard the sound of paper tearing. I ran to the doorway. Hunter was clearing off my drafting table. He wasn't packing. He was sweeping his arm across the surface, knocking everything onto the floor. My blueprints. Large sheets of vellum that had yellowed with age fluttered to the ground like dying birds. These were the original designs for the high-pressure valves that currently stopped the downtown district from flooding during storms. They were historical documents. To Hunter, they were trash. "What is this junk?" Hunter laughed, picking up a delicate plastic model of a hydraulic pump I had been tinkering with. He held it up to the light. "It looks like a toy for a child. Do you still play with toys, Thaddeus?" "Put that down," I said, my voice low. He dropped it. He didn't place it down. He let it fall from shoulder height. The model hit the hardwood floor and shattered into a dozen pieces. A small spring rolled under the desk. "Oops," Hunter said, smirking. "Clumsy me. Well, it was just clutter anyway. We need this space clean. I have Zoom calls with investors. I can't have them seeing this garbage in the background." I knelt down to pick up the pieces. My hands were shaking not from age, but from a rage I was struggling to contain. I picked up a roll of blueprints. It was the schematic for the river dam. Hunter stepped on the edge of the paper with his shoe, leaving a muddy print right over the seal of the engineering board. Yvonne appeared in the doorway. She looked at the mess. She looked at me on my knees. "Thaddeus, stop making a scene," she said, cold. "Hunter is right. You haven't used this room for anything productive in 20 years. Just get a box and move this stuff to the shed. Or better yet, put it on the curb." I looked at my wife. She was looking at Hunter with admiration. She saw a businessman. She saw a savior. She looked at me and saw a janitor cleaning up a mess. I didn't say a word. I stood up. I gathered my drawings. I gathered the broken pieces of my work. I walked out the back door into the rain and carried them to the shed. As I walked, I could hear Hunter laughing inside. He was already measuring the room for his new desk. He thought he was taking over. He didn't know he was setting up his command center on top of a landmine. 3 days later, the temperature dropped. A winter storm hit the state, burying the city in ice. The wind howled against the siding of the house. It was 2 a.m. when the heating system died. I woke up because I could see my breath in the air. The house was silent. The familiar hum of the furnace was gone. I put on my robe and slippers and walked into the hallway. Yvonne was standing there wrapped in a fur coat, her teeth chattering loudly. "It is freezing, Thaddeus," she snapped. "Do something." Hunter came out of the guest room, rubbing his eyes. "What is going on?" "It is like an icebox in here." "The heater is out," I said. "I will go check the pilot light." "Don't bother," Hunter said, pushing past me. "You will probably blow us all up. I will handle this. I know a guy, a specialist." He pulled out his phone and made a call. It was 2 a.m. He spoke in hushed tones, nodding seriously. He hung up and turned to us, a grave look on his face. "Bad news," he said. "I sent a picture of the unit to my contact. He says the main compressor is shot. It is a catastrophic failure. He can come out for an emergency fix, but it is going to cost $15,000, and that is the friends and family rate." $15,000, Yvonne gasped. "We don't have that kind of liquid cash right now. Not until the house sells." Hunter shrugged. "We have no choice, Mom, unless you want to freeze to death. I can try to put it on one of my business cards, but I will need you to sign a promissory note against the house equity." I watched him perform. It was a good performance. He looked concerned. He looked capable. But I knew something he didn't. I built that heating system. I customized it myself in 1990. It didn't have a compressor. It was a radiant heat system based on water circulation. He was lying. He was trying to scam his own mother-in-law out of $15,000 in the middle of the night. "Let him come," Yvonne said, shivering. "Just get it fixed." I waited. I waited until they went back to their rooms to bundle up under layers of blankets. I waited until the house was quiet again. Then I picked up my old metal toolbox. It was heavy, scratched, and smelled of oil. It was the only thing I truly owned in this house anymore. I went down to the basement. It was pitch black. I didn't turn on the light. I didn't need to. I knew every inch of this machinery. I knew it by touch. I knelt on the cold concrete floor. I ran my hands over the pipes. They were ice cold. I found the circulation pump. I took out my screwdriver. I opened the panel. I used my flashlight, holding it in my teeth. The problem was simple. A sediment filter was clogged, tripping the safety sensor. It wasn't a catastrophic failure. It was a 10-minute maintenance job. I cleaned the filter. I reset the sensor. I bypassed the faulty relay with a piece of copper wire I kept in my pocket. I turned the valve. There was a hiss, then a click, then the beautiful deep roar of the burner igniting. The blue flame danced to life. I felt the warmth hit my face instantly. I sat there for a moment in the dark, listening to the water begin to circulate through the veins of the house. I had saved them. Again. And they would never know. My hands were covered in black grease and soot. I wiped them on a rag, but the oil was stubborn. I was tired. My knees ached. I walked back upstairs. The warmth was already spreading through the vents. I went into the kitchen to wash my hands. I was scrubbing the grease off with dish soap when the light flicked on. Yvonne stood there. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the floor. I looked down. In my exhaustion, I hadn't noticed. I had tracked a smudge of black soot onto her pristine white kitchen rug. A footprint, a mark of my labor. "Look at this," she hissed. "Look at what you have done." "I fixed the heater, Yvonne," I said quietly. "It wasn't broken. It just needed cleaning. You don't need to pay anyone $15,000. She didn't care. She didn't even hear me. She pointed at the rug. "You are filthy," she said, her voice shaking with disgust. "You walk around this house like a mechanic. You ruin everything you touch." Hunter was trying to help. He was handling it like a professional. And here you are playing with tools in the dark, making a mess. "It is working, Yvonne," I said. "Feel the air. It is warm." "I don't care if it is warm," she screamed. "I care that my house looks like a garage. Clean this up. Clean it up right now." She turned and stormed out. She went back to the warm bedroom I had just given her. She pulled the covers up, heated by my work, and went to sleep hating me. I stood in the kitchen. I looked at the black stain on the white rug. It looked like ink. It looked like a signature. I knelt down and started to scrub it. But as I scrubbed, I realized something. I could clean the rug, but I couldn't clean the stain on our marriage. That was permanent. The next morning, the silence in the house was different. It wasn't the silence of sleep, it was the silence of a decision that had already been made. I walked into the kitchen. The rug was gone. Yvonne had thrown it out rather than look at the stain. She was sitting at the table. Hunter was there too. He was drinking my coffee. Gabrielle was looking out the window. There was a manila envelope on the table in front of Yvonne. It was thick. "Sit down," Thaddeus Yvonne said. She didn't look at me. She looked at the envelope. I sat. I didn't reach for the coffee. I folded my hands on the table. "We need to talk about reality," Yvonne began. Her voice was rehearsed. I could hear Hunter's words in her mouth. "Hunter and I had a long discussion this morning. This situation isn't working." "What situation?" I asked. "Us," she said. "You. We are living two different lives. I need security, Thaddeus. I need a future. You are stuck in the past. You are content to tinker with broken things. I want to build something new." She slid the envelope across the table. It stopped inches from my hands. "These are divorce papers," she said. I looked at the envelope. I didn't open it. "On what grounds?" I asked. "Irreconcilable differences," she said. "But the real reason is financial incompatibility. You don't contribute, Thaddeus. You haven't brought a paycheck into this house in 10 years. I am tired of carrying you. I am tired of being the only one worrying about our survival." I looked at Hunter. He was smirking behind his coffee cup. He had won. He had convinced her that the man who built the foundation of her life was the one dragging her down. "And the house?" I asked. "The lawyer says it is marital property," Hunter cut in. "But since Mom has been the primary earner and you have been, well, unemployed, we are asking for full possession. You can take your truck. And your tools." Yvonne finally looked at me. Her eyes were hard. There was no love there. Just calculation. "Sign them, Thaddeus," she said. "Don't make this difficult. If you fight us, we will petition for legal fees. We will take everything. Just sign them and leave. Go find a small apartment. Live your simple life. Let us move on." I stood up. I picked up the envelope. It felt light. It felt like freedom. "You want me to leave?" I asked. "Yes," Yvonne said. "Today." I nodded. I looked at Hunter. I looked at Gabrielle. I looked at my wife of 40 years. "Very well," I said. "I will sign." I didn't tell them about the patent royalties. I didn't tell them about the trust fund. I didn't tell them that the heater they were enjoying was a custom design worth more than the car Hunter drove. I took the papers. I walked out of the kitchen. I went to the shed. I packed my tools. I packed my clothes. I got into my old truck. As I drove away, I saw Hunter in the window. He was raising a glass of champagne. He thought he had just evicted a beggar. He didn't know he had just evicted the bank. I drove down the driveway, and for the first time in 40 years, I didn't look back. The war was over. The slaughter was about to begin. Hunger is a weapon that cowards use when they cannot win a fair fight. I learned this standing in line at the local grocery store 2 days after I was banished to the shed. My basket was light. It contained a loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter, and 2 cans of soup. It was the diet of a man who was trying to stretch resources, not the diet of a man who owned the infrastructure of the city. I placed the items on the belt. The cashier was a young woman named Sarah who had known me for years. She smiled as she scanned the items. The total came to $12.40. I swiped my debit card. It was the joint account card, the one linked to my pension, the one I had used for 15 years to buy groceries for the family. The machine beeped, a harsh, dissonant sound that cut through the chatter of the store. "Declined," Sarah said softly. Her smile faltered. "Maybe the chip is dirty, Mr. King. Try it again." I wiped the chip on my sleeve. I swiped it again. The machine beeped again. "Authorized user removed. Contact bank." The line behind me was growing. I could feel the eyes of my neighbors boring into my back. I saw Mrs. Abel Higgins, the town gossip, peering over my shoulder with pity in her eyes. They saw an old man in worn clothes who couldn't afford peanut butter. They saw a failure. Yvonne had done it. She had gone to the bank and removed me from the accounts. She had cut off the flow of money, thinking she could starve me into submission. She thought that if I got hungry enough, I would sign the house over to Hunter just to get a warm meal. It was a tactical move. It was cruel. And it was exactly what I expected. I didn't panic. I didn't argue with the machine. I looked at Sarah. One moment, I said calmly. I stepped back from the register. I sat on the bench near the window. I untied my left work boot. It was a heavy leather boot stained with oil and age. I slipped my foot out. I lifted the insole. Underneath the worn fabric lay a layer of plastic, and inside that plastic were 10 $100 bills. Emergency funds. I had carried this stash for 20 years. My father taught me that a man without a backup plan is a man waiting to die. Hunter and Yvonne thought my wealth was in that bank account. They thought my power was in the plastic card. They didn't know that I had caches like this all over the city. I pulled out a single bill. I put my boot back on. I tied the laces tight. I walked back to the register and placed the $100 bill on the counter. "Keep the change, Sarah," I said. "Put it toward the next person who comes up short." I walked out of that store with my head high, but inside the coldness was spreading. Yvonne had tried to humiliate me publicly. She had tried to take the food out of my mouth. The woman I had protected for 40 years was gone. In her place was an enemy combatant. When I returned to the property, I didn't go to the main house. I went to the shed. My exile. My sanctuary. But as I approached, I saw the door was wide open. My heart hammered against my ribs. I dropped the grocery bag. I ran. Hunter was inside. He had torn the place apart. My toolboxes were overturned. Wrenches and screwdrivers were scattered across the concrete floor like shrapnel. He was looking for money. He was looking for the hoard he was convinced I had hidden. He hadn't found money, but he had found the metal filing cabinet in the corner. He had pried it open with a crowbar. The floor was covered in papers, yellowed documents, technical schematics. And right in the center of the room, Hunter stood holding a thick document bound in a blue cover. It was United States Patent Number 492176. The patent for the variable pressure flow control valve. The invention that had revolutionized urban sewage systems in 1989. The invention that generated $400,000 a month in royalties. Hunter looked at it. He flipped the pages with disdain. He saw complex diagrams. He saw mathematical equations. He didn't see brilliance. He didn't see a fortune. He saw the scribbles of a boring old man. "What is this garbage?" Thaddeus Hunter sneered. He didn't even look up as I entered. "I thought you might have cash hidden in here. Instead, I find stacks of old homework. Look at this. Do you really think anyone cares about your little drawings of pipes?" "Put that down, Hunter," I said. My voice was a low growl. "That document is worth more than your life." Hunter laughed. It was a dry barking sound. He pulled a gold lighter from his pocket. It was a lighter he had bought with my money. "You are delusional, old man," he said. "You hold on to this trash like it is treasure. This is why you are poor. This is why Mom is leaving you. You are obsessed with the past. You are obsessed with junk. Let me help you clean up." He flicked the lighter. The flame jumped up. "No," I shouted. I stepped forward, but I was too slow. Hunter touched the flame to the corner of the document. The paper was old. It was dry. It caught instantly. The fire curled the edge of the page. It ate through the cover. It licked at the official red seal of the United States Patent Office. I watched the fire consume the date of issuance. I watched it turn my legacy into black smoke. Hunter dropped the burning document onto the concrete floor. He watched it burn with a look of bored satisfaction. "There," he said. "One less piece of clutter. Maybe now you will focus on signing those house papers instead of playing inventor." He stepped over the burning paper. He walked past me, bumping my shoulder. He walked out of the shed without looking back, leaving me alone with the fire. I didn't chase him. I didn't scream. I walked to the center of the room. I stomped on the fire with my heavy boot. I stomped until the last spark was dead. I stomped until there was nothing left but ash and a smell of burnt history. I knelt down. I touched the blackened remains of the patent. The heat was still radiating from the concrete. That document was the original. It was the first copy sent to me by the government. It was the proof that I was somebody. And he had burned it. He had burned it because he was too stupid to read it. He had burned a multi-million-dollar asset because he thought it was trash. I stopped shaking. The rage that had been burning hot inside me suddenly turned into something else. It turned into ice. It turned into absolute zero. I stood up. I brushed the ash from my knees. I looked around the wrecked shed. I looked at the scattered tools. They wanted a war. They wanted to strip me of everything. They thought they were fighting a helpless old man. They didn't know they had just declared war on the architect of the city. I went to the back of the shed. I moved a heavy workbench aside. Behind it there was a loose panel in the wall. I removed it. Inside was a small waterproof black case. I pulled it out. I opened the latches. Inside sat a satellite phone. It was heavy black and industrial. It was not a toy. It was the direct line to my legal team and my security detail, the one I kept for extreme emergencies. I extended the antenna. I pressed the power button. The screen glowed green in the dim light of the shed. It searched for a signal. 1 bar, 2 bars, 3 bars. I dialed a number I had memorized 20 years ago. It rang once. Fairbanks' voice answered immediately. Clear, professional. It is Thaddeus, I said. There was a pause. The tone on the other end shifted. It became sharp. Alert, Sir Fairbanks said. We haven't received a call on this line in a decade. Is everything all right? No, I said. I looked at the ash on the floor. I looked at the empty space where my life's work used to be. Initiate the zero protocol, I said. Fairbanks took a breath. Sir, the zero protocol is the nuclear option. It will freeze all assets. It will trigger the forensic audits. It will alert the federal authorities to fraud. It will destroy everything in its path. Are you sure? I looked at the door where Hunter had exited. I pictured Yvonne cutting off my bank card. I pictured Gabrielle looking away while her husband humiliated me. I am sure, I said. Burn it down, Fairbanks. Burn it all down. I ended the call. I collapsed the antenna. I put the phone back in the case. I sat on my overturned stool in the middle of the wreckage. I was hungry. I was tired. I was living in a shed. But for the first time in 3 months, I smiled. Hunter liked fire. He liked to burn things. Well, I thought, let us see how he likes it when the fire comes for him. Let us see how he likes it when the ground he stands on turns to ash. The handyman was dead. The king was awake. And the reckoning was coming with the force of a tidal wave. The shed was a tomb of rotting wood and cold air. It smelled of mildew and 20 years of gasoline fumes. The roof leaked in 3 places, dripping a steady rhythm onto the concrete floor that sounded like a clock counting down the seconds of my patience. Hunter called this my new home. He said they needed my bedroom for Gabrielle because she required rest and comfort for a pregnancy that I was starting to suspect was as fake as his smile. They thought they had banished me to a dungeon. They did not realize they had just given me a command center. I did not sleep that first night. Instead, I opened the waterproof case I had retrieved from the false wall. Inside were not just the satellite phone, but components I had salvaged over the years. Microphones the size of a grain of rice. Transmitters I had built from stripped cell phones. Wires thin as spider webs. Hunter saw junk when he looked at my workbench. I saw an arsenal. I waited until the lights in the main house went dark. Then I moved through the backyard like a shadow. I was 70 years old, but my hands were steady. I knew every conduit in that house because I had laid them myself. I slipped a transmitter into the external junction box of the cable line. I slid a microphone under the siding near the master bedroom window. I tapped into the Wi-Fi router from the outside terminal using a bypass code I had written myself. Back in the shed, I set up my monitoring station. An old laptop screen flickered to life. It was grainy black and white, but the audio was crystal clear. I put on my headphones. I heard the house breathing. I heard the refrigerator cycling on. I heard the settle of the foundation. And then I heard them. They were laughing. Hunter and Yvonne were drinking my expensive scotch in the living room. They were toasting to my exile. Hunter called me a rat in a cage. Yvonne laughed and said she finally had the house to herself. They did not know that the rat was listening. They did not know that every word they spoke was being recorded, encrypted, and sent to a secure server 3 states away. I sat there in the freezing cold, wrapped in an old wool blanket, and I realized that my technical skills were not just for city infrastructure. They were for survival. I was building a dam against the flood of their lies. The next evening the rain began. It hammered against the tin roof of the shed, drowning out the sound of my own breathing. I was eating a can of cold beans when the monitor lit up. The camera I had hidden in the living room vent triggered on motion. Hunter and Gabrielle walked into the frame. The audio crackled and then clarified. They were arguing. "I told you to keep your mouth shut," Hunter hissed. His face was twisted in a way I had never seen before. It was ugly. It was the face of a man who was cornered. Gabrielle was crying. She looked small. She looked terrified. "Hunter, please," she begged. "You said we had money. You said the investors paid out. Why are the collectors calling my personal cell phone? They said they are going to break my legs, Hunter. Who are these people?" Hunter grabbed her by the shoulders. He shook her. Hard. "Shut up, Gabrielle. You are going to blow the whole operation. There is no investor money yet because your idiot father will not sign the deed. We are bleeding cash. I need 50,000 by Friday or we are both dead. Do you understand me?" "He is not going to sign." Gabrielle sobbed. He is stubborn. He knows something is wrong. We should just tell him the truth. Maybe he can help. Help, Hunter laughed. It was a cruel sound. That old fool cannot help anyone. He is useless. He is a broke mechanic living in a shed. We need to break him, Gabrielle. We need to make him desperate. I cannot do it anymore, Gabrielle said. She tried to pull away. I cannot lie to him anymore, Hunter. He is my father. Hunter did not let go. His grip tightened. I saw his knuckles turn white on the screen. You will do exactly what I tell you, he growled. You are in this as deep as I am. You signed those loan papers too. If I go down, you go down with me. Gabrielle slapped his chest weakly. Let me go. I am going to talk to Mom. And then it happened. Hunter raised his hand. He did not hesitate. He struck her across the face with the back of his hand. It was a vicious, calculated blow. Gabrielle spun around and fell onto the sofa, clutching her cheek. I stood up so fast my chair flew backward and hit the wall. A roar erupted from my throat, a sound of pure, primal rage. That was my daughter, my little girl, the girl I had carried on my shoulders, the girl I had taught to ride a bike. I grabbed the heavy iron wrench from my workbench. I did not think. I did not plan. I just moved. I ran to the door of the shed. I was going to go in there and I was going to kill him. I was going to shatter his skull with the iron in my hand. I did not care about the law. I did not care about the consequences. No man touches my daughter. I threw the shed door open. The rain hit my face like ice water. I took one step into the mud, and then I stopped. My hand was gripping the wrench so hard my fingers ached. My heart was pounding a war drum against my ribs. I looked at the house. I saw the warm yellow light spilling from the windows. If I went in there now, I would be the aggressor. I would be the violent old man attacking his son-in-law with a weapon. Hunter would lie. He would say Gabrielle fell. Gabrielle was too weak, too terrified to contradict him. She would protect him because she was afraid. Yvonne would back them up. I would go to jail. And from a jail cell I could not save anyone. Hunter would win. He would sell the house while I sat in prison. He would destroy Gabrielle completely. I stood in the pouring rain, the water soaking through my thin shirt, mixing with the cold sweat of my fury. I had to make a choice. I could be a father in this moment and lose the war, or I could be a general and win the future. I lowered the wrench. It felt heavier than the weight of the world. I turned back to the shed. I walked inside and closed the door. I sat down in front of the monitor. Gabrielle was still crying on the sofa. Hunter was pouring himself a drink, his hands shaking. I saved the video file. I backed it up to 3 different servers. I labeled it Evidence File 7 Assault. I watched my daughter weep, and I did nothing. It was the hardest thing I have ever done in 70 years of life. I let her suffer for 10 minutes so I could save her for the rest of her life. I whispered a promise to the screen. I promised her that for every tear she shed tonight, Hunter would pay with a year of his freedom. 2 hours later, the blue lights flashed through the cracks in the shed walls. I thought perhaps a neighbor had heard the screaming. I thought perhaps help had arrived. I was wrong. The door to the shed was kicked open. 2 police officers stood there, rain dripping from the brims of their hats. Their hands were on their holsters. "Step out of the shed," the taller officer shouted. "Keep your hands where we can see them." I stood up slowly. I raised my hands. I walked out into the storm. Yvonne was standing on the back porch. She was wearing a silk robe. She was crying, but they were not real tears. They were the tears of a crocodile. Hunter stood behind her, his arm around her shoulders, playing the protective son. "Officer, that is him." Yvonne sobbed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "He has been out there all night screaming. He threatened to burn the house down. He said he was going to kill us all in our sleep. Look, he has a wrench. He was coming for us." The officer looked at the wrench I had dropped in the mud. He looked at the electronics in the shed, the wires, the monitors. To him, it did not look like a security system. It looked like the workshop of a madman, a stalker. "Thaddeus King, you are being detained for domestic disturbance and making terroristic threats," the officer said. He spun me around. He pulled my arms behind my back. The metal cuffs clicked shut on my wrists. They were cold and tight. They pinched the skin. I did not resist. I did not scream. I looked at Yvonne. "Why are you doing this, Yvonne?" I asked. My voice was calm, almost gentle. She looked away. She could not meet my eyes. "Because you are useless, Thaddeus," she whispered loud enough for the officers to hear. "You are sick and you are dangerous. We are just trying to be safe." Hunter smirked. He looked me right in the eye over the officer's shoulder. His lip was curled in victory. "Do not worry, Dad," he said. "We will take good care of the house. We will take good care of everything." The officer shoved me toward the patrol car. I stumbled in the mud. The rain was blinding now, washing away the world I knew. I was being evicted from the land I had bought with my own sweat. I was being taken away in chains like a criminal while the real criminal stood dry and warm on my porch. I stopped at the car door. I looked back at the house one last time. I looked at the roof I had shingled. I looked at the windows I had installed. It was a fortress I had built to protect my family, and now they were using it to crush me. But as I looked at the dark windows of the study, I thought about the servers humming in the cloud. I thought about the video file of Hunter striking Gabrielle. I thought about the recordings of their conspiracy. You can take the house, I thought. You can take the warmth, but you cannot take the truth. I ducked my head and got into the back of the police car. The door slammed shut, sealing me in. As we drove away, the house disappeared into the rain and the darkness. But I was not leaving in defeat. I was leaving to regroup. They thought they were throwing me into the street. They did not realize they were releasing me into the wild. And in the wild, the lion is king. The police released me at 4 a.m. They opened the heavy steel door and pushed me out into the street as if I were garbage being taken to the curb. It was raining again. The water was cold and sharp against my skin. My clothes were caked with the mud from my own backyard where I had been wrestled to the ground like a criminal. I smelled of wet wool and the stale metallic odor of the holding cell. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment watching the patrol cars slide by on the wet asphalt. To the world I was just another vagrant, a broken old man with nowhere to go, a tragedy. I began to walk. I did not head toward a shelter. I did not look for a bridge to sleep under. I turned my face toward the industrial district. My legs ached. My wrists were bruised from the handcuffs. But with every step I took away from the house that was no longer my home, I felt a strange sensation growing in my chest. It was not despair. It was clarity. For 40 years I had played the role of the humble husband. I had dimmed my own light to make sure Yvonne and the children never felt overshadowed. I had pretended to be small so they could feel big. That performance was over. I walked 5 miles through the sleeping city. The sun was just beginning to bleed gray light into the sky when I reached the perimeter fence. The sign on the gate was discreet. It simply read, "King Infrastructure." High-voltage warning signs lined the fence. Cameras tracked my movement as I approached the security kiosk. The guard was a young man I did not recognize. He stepped out of the booth, his hand resting nervously on his taser. "Move along, Pop," he said, his voice rough with fatigue. "This is private property. You cannot sleep here." I stopped. I looked at him. I did not speak. I simply reached up and pulled the hood of my soaking sweatshirt back. I took off my wire-rimmed glasses and wiped them on my shirt, though it did little good. I looked directly into the camera lens mounted by the gate. The scanner flashed a red beam across my face. It mapped the retina of my eye. It measured the geometry of my facial features. The technology was mine. I had patented the algorithm 5 years ago. The light on the panel turned green. A buzzer sounded loud and authoritative in the morning silence. The heavy steel gates began to roll back with a deep mechanical groan. The guard jumped back. He looked at the monitor inside his booth. He saw the name flashing on the screen. Chairman Thaddeus King, clearance level Alpha. His face went pale. He looked at the ragged man standing in the rain, and then back at the screen. He stammered, "Mr. King, sir, I did not know. I am so sorry. I can call a car to take you up to the main building." "You did your job, son," I said, my voice raspy from the night in the cell. Close the gate behind me. I walked up the long driveway. The landscaping was manicured. The main building rose from the mist like a fortress of glass and steel. It was the brain of the city. Inside this building were the servers that monitored the water pressure for 3 million people. Inside were the blueprints for the bridges and the tunnels. This was my kingdom, and I had been away for too long. I entered the lobby. My muddy boots squeaked on the polished marble floor. The night shift receptionist looked up. She gasped. But she did not call security. She stood up and bowed her head. "Welcome back, Mr. King." I walked past her to the private elevator. I pressed his thumb against the biometric pad. The doors slid open. I rode in silence to the top floor. The penthouse office was exactly as I had left it. It was a space of pure function, walls of glass overlooking the city I helped build, tables covered in prototypes. The air smelled of ozone and filtered oxygen. Park was there, my executive assistant. She had been with me for 30 years. She was the only person who knew the full extent of my double life. She was sitting at her desk reviewing reports. She looked up as the elevator opened. She took in my appearance, the mud, the bruises, the exhaustion. She did not flinch. She did not ask questions. "Good morning, sir," she said as if I had just arrived from a business trip. "I have prepared the executive suite. The shower is running. Your gray suit is pressed and waiting." "Thank you, Park," I said. "Get me coffee. Black, and get me the file on Hunter's debts." I walked into the private quarters attached to my office. I stripped off the wet clothes. I threw them into the trash, the flannel shirt, the worn jeans, the boots that had hidden my emergency money. They were the uniform of Thaddeus the handyman. I did not need them anymore. I stepped into the shower. The water was scalding hot. I scrubbed my skin until it was raw. I washed away the mud from the garden. I washed away the feeling of the handcuffs. I washed away the memory of Yvonne's cold stare. I stood under the water for 20 minutes, letting the heat soak into my bones. When I stepped out, I wrapped myself in a thick white towel. I shaved the gray stubble from my face. I looked in the mirror. The man staring back was not a victim. He was a predator who had been hibernating. I put on the suit. It was Italian wool tailored to fit my frame perfectly. It cost $4,000. I put on the white silk shirt. I tied the tie with a perfect knot. I slipped on the platinum watch. I walked back out into the office. I was Thaddeus King again. Park placed a steaming cup of coffee on my desk. Beside it was a laptop. "You have an urgent email, sir," she said. "It is from a lawyer named Baxter." I sat down at my desk. The granite was cool under my hands. I opened the email. It was marked high priority. "Mr. King," the email read. "As counsel for Mrs. Yvonne King, I am instructing you to complete the attached asset disclosure form immediately. You are required by law to list all personal assets, including bank accounts, vehicles, real estate, and cash holdings for the purpose of equitable distribution in the divorce proceedings. Failure to disclose any asset will be met with severe legal penalties. We are aware of your limited means, but we require full transparency." I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Baxter thought he was cornering a rat. He did not know he was demanding a dragon to list its scales. I opened the form. It was a digital spreadsheet. Name Thaddeus King. Assets, I typed. Under real estate, I wrote none. Under cash on hand, I wrote 0. Under stocks and bonds, I wrote none. Under vehicles, I wrote 1990 Ford F-150 pickup truck. Estimated value $400. Under personal property, I wrote 1 set of mechanics tools. Estimated value $200. I reviewed the document. It was the absolute truth. I owned nothing. I had placed every patent, every property, and every dollar into the King Trust 30 years ago. I was the primary trustee, but I was not the owner. Technically, I was a pauper. I lived on a stipend of $1 a year plus living expenses covered by the corporation. Yvonne wanted half of my money, but half of 0 is 0. I signed the document electronically. I hit send. I pictured Baxter opening it in his plush office. I pictured him sneering at the pathetic list of a poor old man. I pictured him showing it to Yvonne and Hunter and the three of them laughing at my poverty. Let them laugh, I thought. Let them feel secure. Arrogance causes mistakes. And they were about to make a fatal one. My burner phone buzzed on the desk. It was the number I had given to my family. I answered it. "Hello, Thaddeus." It was Hunter. His voice was smooth, confident. He sounded like a man who thought he had already won the war. "Hunter," I said. "We need to talk," old man Hunter said. "Meet me at Dinky's Diner on 4th Street. In an hour, and come alone. Do not bring any of your crazy tools." I hung up without saying goodbye. Dinky's Diner. A place for cheap coffee and greasy spoons. A place where business was done in hushed tones. I told Park to have the car ready. Not the truck. The Phantom. An hour later, I walked into the diner. I had left the jacket of my suit in the car. I rolled up my sleeves. I looked like a tired businessman. Hunter was sitting in a booth at the back. He was wearing a suit that was too shiny and a watch that was too big. He looked nervous. He was shredding a paper napkin into tiny pieces. I sat down across from him. The vinyl seat was sticky. The air smelled of burnt bacon. "You look terrible," Thaddeus Hunter said. He tried to smile, but it looked like a grimace. "Living on the street does not agree with you." "What do you want, Hunter?" I asked. He reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a thick white envelope. He slid it across the table. It hit the sugar dispenser with a clatter. "There is $5,000 in there," Hunter said. "Cash, small bills, untraceable." I looked at the envelope. I did not touch it. "Is this a bribe?" I asked. "It is a gift," Hunter said. "A severance package. Mom feels bad for you, Thaddeus. She really does. She does not want to see you starve. She is willing to drop the restraining order. She won't press charges for the threats you made." "I made no threats," I said quietly. "That is not what the police report says," Hunter said, his voice hardening. "But we can make all of that go away. All you have to do is take this money, sign the quitclaim deed on the house, and leave town. Go to Florida. Go to Arizona. Just go somewhere else." I looked at him. I saw the sweat beading on his forehead. He was desperate. He needed the house. He needed the equity. Without it, the loan sharks would break him. $5,000, I said. "That is what 40 years of marriage is worth to you." "It is more than you are worth," Hunter spat. His facade of kindness cracked. "Be realistic, old man. You have nothing. You are homeless. You are eating beans in a shed. This is the best deal you are ever going to get. Take the money. Sign the paper. Do not be stupid." I reached out and took the envelope. It felt light. $5,000. I made that much in interest every hour while I slept. I opened the envelope. I looked at the bills. Then I looked at Hunter. "I will take it," I said. Hunter let out a breath he had been holding. He smiled. It was a greasy, victorious smile. "Smart move, Thaddeus. I knew you had a brain in there somewhere. Here's the deed. I have a pen." He reached for his briefcase. I raised a hand. "I am not signing your deed, Hunter," I said. Hunter froze. "What? You just said you would take the money." "I said I would take it," I said. "I did not say I would give you the house." I pulled a single crisp $5 bill from my own pocket. I placed it on the table next to his envelope. "This is for the coffee," I said, "and this envelope. I am keeping it as evidence. Evidence of attempted bribery and coercion." Hunter's face turned red. He slammed his hand on the table. "You senile old fool," he hissed. "You are playing games you do not understand. We are going to crush you. We are going to take everything. You will die in the gutter, Thaddeus." I stood up. I loomed over him. In that moment, I let the mask slip completely. I let him see the eyes of the chairman. "You think this is a game, Hunter?" I asked, my voice low and dangerous. "You think because you wear a suit and drive a leased car that you are a player. You are not a player's son. You are a pawn." I took a paper napkin from the dispenser. I took a pen from my pocket. I wrote 6 words on the napkin. I slid it over to him. "I accept your challenge. See you in court." Hunter looked at the napkin. He looked at me. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. He realized he was looking at something he did not recognize. "You are making a mistake," he whispered. I turned and walked away. I walked out of the diner and into the bright afternoon sun. My driver was waiting with the door open. I got into the back of the car. "Take me back to the office," I said. "I have a war to plan." I watched Hunter through the window of the diner as we drove away. He was still staring at the napkin. He looked small. He looked trapped. He did not know it yet, but the walls were already closing in. The homeless man he thought he had bribed was about to buy the bank that held his mortgage. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and old lies. It was a scent I had grown to despise over the last 48 hours. I sat at the defendant table in my 10-year-old gray suit. My hands were folded on the scarred wood surface. I looked calm. I looked resigned. To the casual observer, I looked like a man who had already accepted his defeat. But inside my chest, my heart was beating with the slow, steady rhythm of a hydraulic press waiting to crush steel. Baxter, the lawyer my wife had hired with money she stole from my own credit card, stood in the center of the room. He was a small man with a loud voice and a suit that cost more than the truck I drove. He paced back and forth in front of the judge, gesturing wildly as if he were conducting an orchestra of pity. "Your Honor," Baxter boomed, his voice echoing off the mahogany walls. "We are here today to discuss a tragedy. A tragedy of a woman who has given the best years of her life to a parasite. He pointed a manicured finger at me. I did not blink. I did not look away. I watched him with the cold detachment of a scientist observing a bacteria under a microscope. For 40 years, Mr. King has contributed absolutely nothing to the household economy, Baxter continued. He has no employment history. He has no reported income. He has no savings. He has lived off the charity and the hard work of Mrs. King. He is a financial phantom, Your Honor. A leech who has drained the vitality and the resources of his family. I looked at Yvonne. She was sitting in the witness box, clutching a tissue that was dry as a bone. She wore black as if she were mourning the death of her bank account. When Baxter called me a leech, she let out a small, rehearsed sob. She dabbed at her eyes. She looked fragile. She looked like the victim. It has been so hard, she whispered loud enough for the microphone to catch. Every day was a struggle. I worked double shifts. I saved every penny. And he just tinkered in that shed. He played with his toys while I kept the roof over our heads. Lies. I remembered the roof she talked about. I remembered the summer of 1998. The roof had collapsed during a hurricane. We had no insurance because Yvonne had spent the premium money on a vacation with her sisters. I spent 3 weeks on that roof in 100-degree heat laying shingles until my hands bled. I paid for the materials with cash from a patent sale I never told her about. I built that roof. I built the walls. I built the life she was now trying to sell for scrap. But I said nothing. I let her lie. I let her paint her masterpiece of deception. I needed the judge to see it. I needed the record to show exactly how low she was willing to go. He is not just useless, Baxter sneered, turning back to me. He is malicious. He refuses to sign the divorce papers. He refuses to vacate the property. He is holding this poor woman hostage emotionally and financially. We are asking the court for an immediate eviction order and a full seizure of any hidden assets, although we doubt there are any. I looked at Hunter in the gallery. He was sitting behind his mother, leaning forward. His eyes were bright with greed. He was enjoying this. He was watching his father-in-law being stripped of his dignity, and he was smiling. He thought this was the end. He thought I was broken. Baxter finished his opening statement with a flourish, slamming a file onto his table. We ask the court to show no mercy to a man who has shown no ambition, Your Honor. The judge looked at me. She was a stern woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many lies. Mr. Fairbanks, she said, addressing my lawyer. Do you have a response? Fairbanks stood up slowly. He was the opposite of Baxter. He was tall, quiet, and moved with the economy of a man who did not need to shout to be heard. He buttoned his jacket. He adjusted his glasses. We do, Your Honor, Fairbanks said. But before we proceed with our defense or cross-examination, we have a procedural request. The judge raised an eyebrow. A procedural request at a preliminary hearing. This is unusual. Given the nature of the accusations, Fairbanks said, his voice calm and level. And given the public interest that has been generated by the plaintiff's family on social media regarding this case, we feel that transparency is essential. I looked at Olivia in the back row. She was on her phone, probably live streaming the event to her friends. She had turned our family tragedy into content. Fairbanks continued. My client, Mr. King, has been accused of being a fraud, a parasite, a burden. These are serious allegations that attack his character and his legacy. Therefore, we request that the remainder of these proceedings, including the trial, be open to media cameras and broadcast live. We want the world to see the truth. Silence fell over the courtroom. The judge looked surprised. Baxter looked confused. He leaned over and whispered frantically to Yvonne. Usually defendants want privacy. Usually men in my position want to hide their shame. By asking for cameras, I was doing something insane, or something incredibly confident. Hunter leaned forward and tapped his mother on the shoulder. I saw his lips move. I saw the flash of excitement in his eyes. Let them do it, he whispered loud enough for me to hear. Let the whole world see him lose Mom. We will be famous. You will be the sympathetic victim on national television. We can get a book deal. Yvonne looked at Hunter. She looked at the cameras that were not there yet. She patted her hair. Vanity was her weakness. Greed was her addiction. She saw an opportunity to be a star. We agree, Yvonne said, standing up before Baxter could stop her. Let them film. I have nothing to hide. Let everyone see what a useless man looks like. Baxter looked like he wanted to strangle her, but he forced a smile. We have no objection. Your Honor, he said. If Mr. King wants to be humiliated on a national stage, we will not stand in his way. The judge looked at me. Mr. King, do you understand what you are asking? Once the cameras are in, they do not leave. Your dirty laundry will be aired for the nation. I stood up. I leaned on my cane. I looked the judge in the eye. I understand perfectly. Your Honor, I said, I want my family to see me clearly. I want there to be no shadows where lies can hide. So be it, the judge said, banging her gavel. Motion granted. Cameras will be allowed starting tomorrow. We are adjourned until 9 a.m. The courtroom erupted in noise. People stood up. Chairs scraped against the floor. Hunter high-fived Gabrielle. They were celebrating. They thought I had just handed them a winning lottery ticket. They did not realize I had just locked them in a cage with a tiger and turned on the lights. I walked out of the courtroom with Fairbanks. The hallway was crowded. The air was cooler out here, away from the stench of Baxter's cologne. Good work, Fairbanks, I said quietly. It was a risk, Sir Fairbanks replied. But they took the bait. Their arrogance is their blind spot. We walked toward the exit. The heavy glass doors opened and the bright afternoon sun hit my face. I took a deep breath. Suddenly a black limousine pulled up to the curb. It was a sleek, long vehicle with diplomatic plates. A man stepped out from the back seat. He was Japanese, impeccably dressed in a dark suit. He was surrounded by an aura of power that made the people on the sidewalk step back instinctively. It was Mr. Tanaka, the CEO of Tanaka Heavy Industries, one of the largest construction conglomerates in the world, and my oldest business partner. He saw me. He did not see a ragged old man. He saw a peer. He walked straight up to me, ignoring the crowd. He stopped 3 feet away and bowed deeply, a bow of profound respect. Chairman King Tanaka said, his voice respectful. It is an honor to see you. I heard about your legal troubles. My legal team is at your disposal if you require assistance. The bridge project in Tokyo awaits your final approval. We will not pour a single cubic meter of concrete without your signature. I bowed back slightly. Thank you, Tanaka-san, I said. I appreciate your loyalty. The approval will come soon. I just have some house cleaning to do first. He nodded, understanding. He handed me a simple white envelope. The quarterly report, sir, and the royalty statement. It has been a profitable season. Thank you, I said, taking the envelope. He bowed again, got back into the limousine, and the car glided away into traffic like a shark disappearing into the deep. I turned around. Hunter and Yvonne were standing by the courthouse doors. They had seen everything. They were staring at the spot where the limousine had been. Their mouths were open. Who was that? Yvonne asked, her voice trembling slightly. Hunter laughed. It was a nervous, forced sound. He shook his head, dismissing the reality his eyes had just witnessed. Nobody. Mom, he said loud enough for me to hear. Probably some actor the old man hired to make himself look important. Look at him. He is holding a white envelope like it is a secret document. It is probably a coupon for a buffet. Yvonne relaxed. She laughed too. You are right. He is pathetic, trying to play pretend at his age. They walked past me toward their rental car. Hunter bumped my shoulder deliberately. Nice try, Dad, he sneered. But you do not have the money to hire actors for the whole trial. Save your pennies. You are going to need them for the bus fare. I watched them go. I felt the weight of the envelope in my pocket. Inside was a check for $3 million. They saw what they wanted to see. They saw a delusion. They did not see the truth because the truth was too terrifying to accept. I got into Fairbanks' car. Take me to the lab, I said. I have work to do. As we drove away, I looked at the city skyline. I saw the cranes. I saw the bridges. I saw my work everywhere. Tomorrow the cameras would turn on. Tomorrow the world would see the difference between a man who talks about power and a man who builds it. Hunter wanted a show. I was going to give him a master class. I met Gabrielle in the park where I taught her to ride a bicycle 20 years ago. It was neutral ground. It was a place of memories. I sat on a wooden bench watching the squirrels chase each other up the trunk of an old oak tree. I had a manila envelope in my hands. It was not thick, but it was heavy. Inside was the truth about the man she married. It was the last lifeline I could throw to a drowning woman. She arrived 10 minutes late. She looked terrible. Her eyes were puffy and red-rimmed. She wore large sunglasses to hide the fatigue or perhaps to hide the shame. She sat down on the far end of the bench, leaving 2 feet of empty space between us. That space felt like a canyon. Daddy, she said, her voice thin and brittle. "Hunter does not know I am here. If he finds out, he will be furious. Please make this quick." I looked at her. I saw the little girl with the scraped knee. I saw the teenager who wanted to be a doctor. Now I saw a woman who was afraid of her own shadow. "I am not here to fight, Gabrielle," I said softly. "I am here to save you." I slid the envelope across the bench. "What is this?" she asked, looking at it with suspicion. "It is a dossier," I said. "My private investigator compiled it. It contains Hunter's financial records. It contains his credit history. And it contains photographs. Photographs of what she whispered. Photographs of Hunter meeting a woman named Jessica at the Sapphire Motel," I said. "He has been seeing her for 6 months. He pays for the room with the credit cards he opened in your mother's name." Gabrielle flinched as if I had slapped her. She reached for the envelope, but her hand hovered over it, trembling. She wanted to know, but she was terrified of the answer. "You are lying," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You just hate him. You have always hated him because he is successful. He is not successful." "Gabrielle," I said, my voice hardening, "he is a fraud. Look at the bank statements in that folder. He owes $2 million to illegal lenders. He leveraged the house. He leveraged your car. He even leveraged your life insurance policy. If he cannot pay them back, they will come for him, and they will come for you." She finally picked up the envelope. She opened the flap. She pulled out the photos. I watched her face as she looked at them. I saw the denial crumble. I saw the heartbreak shatter her composure. There was a photo of Hunter kissing a blonde woman in the parking lot. There was a photo of him handing her a stack of cash. There was a copy of a text message thread where he called Gabrielle a naive cow who was his ticket to Easy Street. "Oh God," she sobbed, covering her mouth. "Oh God, Daddy." I moved across the bench. I wrapped my arms around her. She was stiff at first, but then she collapsed into me, crying into my coat just like she did when she was a child. "He told me he was working late," she wept. "He told me he was building a future for us. He is building a coffin, Gabrielle," I said, stroking her hair. "But you do not have to get in it. You can leave him. You can come with me. I have resources. I can protect you. We can go to the police together. We can end this nightmare today." She pulled back and looked at me. Her mascara was running down her cheeks. "But the trial," she said. "He says if we stick together, we win. He says we will be rich." "There is no rich," I said firmly. "There is only prison. Hunter is going to jail. Mom is going to lose everything. Do not go down with them. Be my daughter again. Be the woman I raised." She looked at the photos again. She looked at me. I saw a spark of anger in her eyes. It was a tiny spark, but it was there. "I cannot go back to that house," she said. "I cannot look at him." "You do not have to," I said. "Come with me right now. My driver is waiting." She stood up. She clutched the envelope to her chest. "I need to get my things," she said. "My passport, my jewelry, the things Grandma gave me. I will buy you new things," I said. "Do not go back there. I have to Daddy," she said. "He will burn them if I leave. Just give me an hour. I will pack a bag. I will meet you at your office, I promise." I looked at her. I wanted to forbid it. I wanted to drag her into my car. But she was 30 years old. I could not kidnap her. I had to trust her. "1 hour," I said. "If you are not there, I am coming for you with the police." "I promise," she said. She kissed my cheek. It was a kiss of gratitude. Or maybe it was a kiss of goodbye. I watched her walk away toward her car. She looked stronger. She walked faster. I allowed myself to feel a moment of hope. I thought I had broken the spell. I thought I had saved my little girl. I was a fool. Gabrielle drove straight back to the house that used to be mine. She walked through the front door clutching the envelope like a shield. She was angry. She was ready to confront him. She was ready to leave. But Hunter was waiting. He was sitting in my old armchair in the living room facing the door. He was cleaning his fingernails with a small knife. He looked up as she entered. His eyes were cold, empty. "Where have you been?" he asked. His voice was soft, but it carried a threat. "I was with my father," Gabrielle said. Her voice shook, but she stood her ground. Hunter stood up. He walked toward her slowly. "With the enemy," he said. "And what lies did the old man tell you today?" "He did not lie," Gabrielle said. She threw the envelope at him. It hit his chest and fell to the floor. Photos spilled out. The image of him kissing Jessica lay face up on the rug. Hunter looked down. He did not look surprised. He did not look ashamed. He laughed. He bent down and picked up the photo. He looked at it admiringly. "Technology is amazing, isn't it?" he said. "What are you talking about?" Gabrielle screamed. "That is you. That is you cheating on me while I cook your dinner and lie for you." Hunter shook his head. He walked over to her. He loomed over her, blocking the light. "You are so stupid, Gabrielle," he said. "That is Photoshop. It is a fake. Your father has millions of dollars, right? That is what he claims. He hired experts to make these. He is trying to divide us. He knows that together we are strong. Alone we are weak. He wants to isolate you so he can control you. He is not controlling me," Gabrielle cried. "You are. Look at the bank statements, Hunter. You owe $2 million. Hunter grabbed her face. He squeezed her jaw until she whimpered. "Those are fake, too," he hissed. "I am a genius, Gabrielle. I am an investor. We are going to be billionaires. But your father is jealous. He is a failure. He wants to drag us down into the mud with him. Are you going to let him do that? Are you going to let that jealous old man ruin our future?" He released her face. He stepped back and opened his arms. "I love you, Gabrielle," he said. "I do everything for us. Do you really believe I would cheat on you? Do you really believe I would steal? Or do you believe the man who abandoned you to live in a shed? The man who is trying to send your husband to prison?" Gabrielle looked at him. She looked at the photos. She looked at his open arms. Her mind fractured. The fear was too great. The reality of leaving him, of facing the world alone, was too terrifying. It was easier to believe the lie. It was safer to be a victim than a survivor. She fell to her knees. She started to cry. "He said he wanted to save me," she sobbed. "He wants to own you," Hunter said. He knelt down beside her. He stroked her hair. "But I will protect you. We have to be strong. We have to destroy him before he destroys us." "Give me the phone." Gabrielle handed him her phone. Hunter dialed my number. He put it on speaker. He held it to her lips. "Tell him," Hunter whispered. "Tell him what you choose." I was sitting in my office at King Infrastructure. The hour had passed. I was staring at the phone, praying for it to ring. When it did, I picked it up on the first ring. "Gabrielle," I said, "are you safe?" "Daddy," she said. Her voice was cold. It sounded like a recording. It sounded dead. "Where are you?" I asked. "I am at home," she said, "with my husband. Gabrielle, listen to me." "No, you listen," she screamed. The anger in her voice was not her own. It was borrowed. It was Hunter's anger channeled through her throat. "You are a liar. You made those photos. You are trying to ruin my marriage because you are miserable. I hate you. Do not call me again. I am going to testify against you. I am going to tell the judge everything Hunter wants me to say. You are dead to me." The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone. The silence in the office was absolute. I looked out the window at the city I had built. I saw the lights of the skyscrapers. I saw the flow of traffic. I had controlled rivers. I had tamed floods. But I could not stop the poisoning of my own daughter's mind. I put the phone down on the desk. I felt a tear run down my cheek. It was hot and salty. It was the last tear I would shed for this family. I pressed the intercom button. "Fairbanks, come in here." The door opened. Fairbanks walked in. He saw my face. He saw the grief etched into the lines around my eyes. "Sir," he asked. "My daughter is gone," I said. My voice was steady. It was the voice of a man who had just buried his last hope. She has chosen her side. There is no one left to save. Fairbanks nodded. He did not offer empty platitudes. He waited for the order. I stood up. I walked to the window. I looked at the reflection of the old man in the glass. He looked tired, but behind the fatigue there was iron. "Activate the Zero Protocol," I said. Fairbanks took a sharp breath. "Sir, that will destroy them completely. It will bankrupt your wife. It will put Hunter in federal prison. It will leave your daughter homeless." "I know," I said. I turned to face him. "They declared war, Fairbanks. They wanted to see who I really was. Now they are going to find out. Initiate the protocol, freeze the assets, release the files to the FBI, and prepare the press release." "Yes, sir," Fairbanks said. He left the room. I was alone. I opened the drawer of my desk. I took out the wooden necklace I had retrieved from the trash. I held it in my hand. It was beautiful. It was broken. Just like my family. I put the necklace back in the drawer and locked it. "Let the trial begin," I whispered. "Let the world see." The father was gone. The chairman had taken the chair, and tomorrow the gavel would fall like a guillotine. The red light on the television camera was a single unblinking eye that stared directly into my soul. It judged me without mercy. I sat at the defendant table with my hands folded over the scarred wood surface. I made sure to wear my oldest suit. It was gray and frayed at the cuffs. I wore the shoes with the scuffed leather. I wanted the world to see the man my wife described. I wanted them to see the poverty she claimed I had forced upon her. The courtroom was packed. The air was thick with the smell of floor wax and stale perfume. I could hear the low hum of the crowd behind me. They were whispering. They were pointing. To them, I was a monster. I was the deadbeat husband who had leeched the life out of a saintly woman for 40 years. I glanced at the monitor on the side of the room where the live stream comments were scrolling by in a blur of digital hatred. Scumbag. Throw him in jail. He makes me sick. I watched the words fly by. Each one was a stone thrown by a stranger, but I did not flinch. I let the stones hit me. I let the weight of their judgment settle on my shoulders because I knew that the heavier the burden, the sweeter the release would be. Yvonne sat in the witness box. She looked perfect. She wore a modest blue dress that she must have bought just for this occasion because I had never seen it before. She wore no jewelry. Her hair was pulled back simply. She looked tired. She looked like a woman who had carried the world on her back and finally collapsed. It was a masterpiece of acting. Mr. Baxter stood in the center of the room. He adjusted his expensive silk tie and gave the jury a sympathetic smile before turning to Yvonne. "Mrs. King," he said softly, "please tell the court about your financial life with the defendant. Tell us about the struggle." Yvonne took a shaky breath. She dabbed at her eyes with a white handkerchief. Her hand trembled just enough to be convincing. "It was a nightmare," she whispered into the microphone. Her voice was thin and fragile. "For 40 years I worked myself to the bone. I worked double shifts at the diner, standing on my feet for 12 hours a day. I cleaned houses on the weekends, scrubbing floors until my knees bled. I did everything to keep a roof over our heads." And the defendant Baxter asked, pointing a finger at me, "What did he do while you were working?" Yvonne looked at me then. Her eyes were hard and cold, but to the camera they probably looked full of sorrow. "He slept," she said. "He slept until noon every day. He sat in his chair and watched television. He told me he was thinking. He told me he was inventing things. But I never saw an invention. I never saw a product. I only saw a man who refused to lift a finger to help his family. I sat there and listened to her rewrite history. I remembered those years differently. I remembered working the night shift at the foundry, sweating in 100-degree heat so I could buy copper wire and steel tubing for my prototypes during the day. I remembered coming home covered in soot and grease, my body aching so badly I could barely walk. I remembered fixing the washing machine and the dryer and the plumbing because we could not afford a repairman. I remembered putting every single extra dollar into the joint account only to watch it vanish on her clothes and her bingo nights and her vacations with her sisters. Yvonne continued her story, weaving a tapestry of lies that was suffocating in its detail. "He stole from me," she said, tears finally spilling onto her cheeks. "I would leave my tip money in a jar on the kitchen counter. It was money for groceries, money for Gabrielle to have new shoes for school. And in the morning the jar would be empty. He took it. He took the food out of his own daughter's mouth to buy junk for his shed. He bought scrap metal and wires and trash." A gasp went through the courtroom. I felt the collective disgust of the audience. I looked at the jury. They were shaking their heads. One juror, a woman in the front row, looked at me with pure hatred. I remembered the jar. I remembered putting money into it, not taking it out. I remembered selling my grandfather's watch to pay for Gabrielle's braces because Yvonne had spent the dental money on a new sofa. But I could not say that. Not yet. I had to let her finish. I had to let her dig the hole deep enough for the entire world to see. "He never paid a bill," she declared, her voice gaining strength. "Not once in 40 years. I paid the mortgage. I paid the electric. I paid the water. He lived in my house like a ghost. He used my heat. He ate my food, and he never said thank you. He just demanded more. He told me I owed him. He said a wife should support her husband's dreams. But they were not dreams. They were delusions." Baxter nodded gravely. He was pacing back and forth, soaking up the attention. "And did he ever try to get a job?" Baxter asked. "Did he ever try to contribute anything at all?" Yvonne laughed. It was a bitter, broken sound that echoed off the mahogany walls. "A job," she said. "I begged him to get a job. My cousin offered him work at the warehouse moving boxes. My neighbor offered him work painting fences. He refused them all. He said he was too smart for manual labor. He said he was a genius. He said the world would pay him millions one day, but the only thing he ever earned was my contempt." I looked at Hunter in the gallery. He was smirking. He whispered something to Gabrielle and she looked down at her lap. She knew the truth. She knew I paid for her college tuition in cash. She knew I bought her first car. She knew I had saved her from financial ruin a dozen times. But she sat there in silence. She let her mother crucify me because she was afraid. She was weak, and her silence was a knife in my back. The hatred in the room was physical now. It pressed against my chest, making it hard to breathe. I was the villain of the week. I was the symbol of every lazy, ungrateful man who had ever lived. Baxter paused for effect. He looked at the cameras, ensuring they caught his righteous indignation. "Mrs. King," he said, "tell us how it ended. Tell us why we are here today." Yvonne took a deep breath. She straightened her spine. She looked directly at me, and for a moment the mask slipped. I saw the greed. I saw the malice. "He tried to destroy us," she said. "When I finally told him I could not do it anymore. When I told him we were drowning in debt because of his laziness. He snapped. He threatened to burn the house down. He threatened to hurt Hunter. He said if he could not have the house, then no one would. Lies. Vicious, dangerous lies. He is a violent man," she shouted. Her voice cracked with fake emotion. "He is a parasite. I gave him everything. My youth, my beauty, my life. And he took it all and threw it in the garbage." She stood up in the witness box. She gripped the railing until her knuckles turned white. She pointed at me again, her fingers shaking with rage. "Look at him!" she screamed. "Look at him sitting there in his cheap suit pretending to be a victim. He is not a victim. He is a predator." The judge banged her gavel. "Mrs. King, please sit down." Yvonne ignored her. The adrenaline of the performance had taken over. She was the star of her own tragedy, and she was going to deliver the monologue of a lifetime. She wanted to hurt me. She wanted to humiliate me. She wanted to make sure I never recovered. "He is worthless," she shrieked. Her face was twisted with ugly, triumphant rage. "He is nothing. He has never done a single useful thing in his entire miserable life. He is just a useless husband, a useless father, a useless man." The words rang out in the courtroom like a gunshot. "He is just a useless husband." Silence followed. Absolute heavy silence. The court reporter stopped typing. The jury stared at her. Even Baxter looked a little surprised by the ferocity of her outburst. Yvonne stood there panting. Her chest was heaving. She glared at me, waiting for me to break. She wanted me to yell back. She wanted me to prove her right. I did not move. I did not blink. I looked at her with a calmness that infuriated her. I looked at the woman I had loved for 40 years, and I saw nothing but a stranger who had just dug her own grave on live television. The judge cleared her throat. The sound was loud in the quiet room. "Mrs. King, you will sit down, or I will hold you in contempt of court." Yvonne sat slowly. She smoothed her dress. She patted her hair. She looked at the jury, trying to regain her composure, trying to put the mask of the victim back on. But it was crooked now. The rage had shown through. The audience had seen the teeth behind the smile. Baxter adjusted his tie. He looked a little less confident than before. No further questions. "Your Honor," he said. He walked back to his table, avoiding my eyes. The judge looked at Fairbanks. "Cross-examination, counselor," she asked. Fairbanks stood up. He did not rush. He buttoned his jacket. He picked up a single blue file folder from his table. He walked to the center of the room. He did not look at Yvonne. He did not look at the jury. He looked at the judge. "Your Honor." Fairbanks said, his voice calm and steady. "Before I cross-examine the witness, I have a request." The judge frowned. "This is highly irregular, Mr. Fairbanks." "I am aware, Your Honor," Fairbanks said. "However, the witness has made a specific and damaging claim. She has stated under oath that my client is useless. She has stated that he has never done a single useful thing in his life." Fairbanks turned to look at Yvonne. She sneered at him, confident in her victory. "This claim goes to the heart of the matter," Fairbanks continued. "It is the foundation of her argument for the division of assets. If my client is useless, then he deserves nothing. But if he is not useless, then her entire testimony is perjury. What are you getting at, counselor? The judge asked impatiently. I would like to call a special expert witness, Fairbanks said. A witness who can definitively define the utility of my client to this court and to this city. Baxter jumped up. Objection, Your Honor. This is a surprise witness. We have not been notified. This is a trial by ambush. This witness is a matter of public record. Fairbanks countered, his voice hard. And his testimony is vital to establishing the character and the contribution of the defendant. The judge looked at Fairbanks. She saw the steel in his eyes. She saw the confidence. She looked at me sitting calmly at the table. She sensed that the ground was about to shift. I will allow it, she said, but make it quick. Fairbanks nodded. He turned to the bailiff standing by the door. Please open the doors. The bailiff walked to the double doors at the back of the courtroom. The cameras swiveled to follow him. The audience craned their necks, whispering. Hunter leaned forward, frowning, a look of confusion crossing his face. The doors swung open. A hush fell over the room. It was a silence deeper than before. Walking through the doors was not a family member. It was not a friend. It was not a doctor. It was a phalanx of men in dark suits with earpieces, security detail, and walking in the center of them was a man everyone in the city recognized, a man whose face was on the news every night, a man who held the keys to the city. The mayor. He walked with purpose. He carried a leather portfolio tucked under his arm. He did not look at the cameras. He walked straight down the aisle, his footsteps echoing on the floor. He walked past the stunned audience. He walked past Hunter, whose mouth had fallen open. He walked past Baxter, who looked like he was about to faint. The mayor stopped at the gate. He looked at me. He nodded. It was a nod of respect, a nod of recognition between equals. Then he looked at the judge. Your Honor, the mayor said, his voice booming in the silent room. I am here to testify on behalf of Mr. Thaddeus King, and I am here to explain to this court exactly who keeps this city alive. The mayor sat in the witness chair. The wood creaked slightly under his weight. He adjusted the microphone. He looked at the jury. He looked at the cameras. Then he looked at me. His expression was not one of pity. It was one of profound gratitude. State your name and title for the record, please, Fairbanks requested. His voice was calm. He knew he was about to drop a bomb that would level the building. I am Mayor Lawrence Sterling, the witness stated. I have served this city for 12 years. Thank you, Mayor Fairbanks said. He walked over to the exhibit table. He picked up a thick binder stamped with the official seal of the city engineering department. He carried it to the witness stand. Mayor Sterling, are you familiar with the infrastructure crisis of 1995? Fairbanks asked. The year the subway tunnels flooded and the city faced bankruptcy due to the failure of the old water retention systems. I am very familiar with it, the mayor replied. It was the darkest time in our history. We were losing millions of dollars a day. The engineers told us it was impossible to fix without tearing up the entire downtown district. They said the city would drown. And how was that crisis resolved? Fairbanks asked. The mayor smiled. It was a genuine smile. It was resolved by a ghost, he said. We received a set of blueprints in the mail, anonymous. They detailed a revolutionary hydraulic pressure valve system. It was elegant, it was brilliant, it used the existing pipes, but changed the flow dynamics using a variable aperture design. We built a prototype. It worked perfectly. It saved the city $3 billion in reconstruction costs. And did you ever find out who sent those blueprints? Fairbanks asked. We did, the mayor said. We tracked the patent number. It was filed under a holding company, King Innovations. And who is the primary patent holder and sole beneficiary of King Innovations? Fairbanks asked. The mayor pointed at me. His finger was steady. That man right there, he said. Mr. Thaddeus King. A murmur went through the courtroom. It started low like the rumble of a distant train and grew louder. The jury was leaning forward. The reporters were typing furiously on their laptops. Fairbanks let the moment hang in the air. He wanted the weight of it to settle on Yvonne's shoulders. Mayor Fairbanks continued. Could you tell the court the extent of Mr. King's contributions to this city? Is it just the valves? The mayor shook his head. Oh no, it is much more than that. Thaddeus King designed the ventilation scrubbers for the new subway line. He created the alloy composite we use for the suspension bridge cables. He holds the patent for the traffic light synchronization algorithm that reduced congestion by 40%. If you flush a toilet in this city, if you ride the train, if you turn on a tap, you are using a system designed by Thaddeus King. The murmur turned into a roar. The judge banged her gavel. "Order," she shouted. "Order in this court." Fairbanks waited for the silence to return, and Mayor Fairbanks asked softly, "Does the city pay for the use of these patents?" "Of course," the mayor said. "We pay a licensing fee. It is a standard government contract." "And what is the current monthly royalty payment remitted to King Innovations?" Fairbanks asked. The mayor opened his leather portfolio. He put on a pair of reading glasses. He looked at a document. "As of the last fiscal quarter, the monthly remittance is $412,000.65, the mayor stated clearly. The courtroom exploded. It was chaos. People stood up. Cameras flashed. $400,000 a month. That was nearly $5 million a year. And that was just from the city. That did not include the private sector contracts. I sat still. I did not smile. I looked at the table. I remembered the nights I sat in the shed drawing those valves while my hands were numb from the cold. I remembered Yvonne screaming at me that I was wasting electricity by keeping the light on. I remembered Hunter calling my work junk. The judge hammered her gavel until the wood sounded like it might crack. "Silence," she commanded. "If there is another outburst, I will clear the courtroom." The room quieted down, but the energy was electric. The air was vibrating with the shock of the revelation. Fairbanks turned to the defense table. "Your Honor," Fairbanks said, "the plaintiff claims my client is useless. The city of Atlanta disagrees to the tune of $5 million a year. No further questions." The camera zoomed in on Yvonne. Her face was a mask of absolute horror. It was as if her soul had left her body. Her mouth hung open in a silent scream. Her eyes were wide and unblinking, staring at the mayor as if he were a monster from a nightmare. She looked at me. For the first time in 40 years, she really looked at me. She did not see the husband she bullied. She did not see the handyman. She saw the millions she had thrown away. She saw the trips to Paris she could have had. She saw the jewelry. She saw the power. And she realized with a sickening lurch in her stomach that she had treated a king like a beggar. Her hands started to shake. She gripped the edge of the witness stand so hard her fingernails dug into the wood. She looked like she was going to vomit. The realization was physical. It was a blow to the gut. She had filed for divorce. She had called me useless under oath. She had burned the bridge while she was still standing on it. Behind her in the gallery, Hunter looked like a man who had just been shot. All the blood had drained from his face. He was gray. He was sweating profusely. His expensive suit suddenly looked like a costume. He was doing math in his head. I could see the numbers spinning behind his eyes. He owed $2 million to loan sharks. He had bet everything on getting the house. He thought I was broke. He thought he could bully me into submission. Now he realized he had picked a fight with a man who could buy and sell him 100 times over without blinking. His hands were trembling so badly he dropped his phone. It clattered to the floor, but he did not pick it up. He just stared at me. The arrogance was gone. The smug smile was gone. There was only terror, pure primal terror. He knew what happened to people who owed money and could not pay, and he knew that his safety net had just turned into a brick wall. Next to him, Gabrielle was frozen. She had her hands over her mouth. Tears were streaming down her face, but she was not making a sound. She was looking at me with a mixture of awe and shame. She realized what she had done. She realized she had chosen the fraud over the genius. She remembered the envelope I tried to give her in the park. She remembered me telling her I could save her. She realized I was not lying. I really could have saved her. I could have paid off the debts. I could have given her a life of freedom. But she had thrown the photos in my face. She had called me a liar. She had cut me out of her life. The regret on her face was a physical weight. She slumped in her seat as if her bones had turned to water. She looked at Hunter, and for the first time I saw disgust in her eyes. She saw him for what he was. A small, loud man standing in the shadow of a giant. But the worst reaction was Baxter, the lawyer, the man who was supposed to be the shark. He was sweating. A bead of perspiration rolled down his forehead and dripped onto his nose. He wiped it away with a shaking hand. He looked at the judge. He looked at the mayor. He looked at his file. He realized he had committed malpractice. He had failed to do a basic asset search. He had believed his client's story without verifying a single fact. He had walked into a courtroom and insulted one of the most powerful men in the city. His career was flashing before his eyes. He knew that after this, no one would ever hire him again. He was the lawyer who sued a billionaire for poverty. He was a joke. The judge turned her gaze to Baxter. Her eyes were hard as flint. She picked up a new file that the bailiff had just placed on her desk. It was sealed with red tape. She ripped the tape open. She pulled out a stack of documents. They were tax returns, my tax returns. She flipped through them, page after page of numbers, 7 figures, 8 figures, charitable donations that exceeded Baxter's lifetime earnings. She closed the file. She took off her glasses. She leaned over the bench. The silence in the room was so heavy it felt like gravity had doubled. "Counselor," the judge said. Her voice was soft, but it carried to every corner of the room. Baxter stood up. His legs were wobbly. "Yes, Your Honor. You stood in my courtroom yesterday," the judge said, "and you told me this man was a leech. You told me he was a financial phantom. You told me he had contributed nothing to society." I was misinformed. "Your Honor," Baxter stammered. "My client," she told me. "Your client is not an officer of the court," the judge snapped. "You are. Did you not think to run a simple background check on the defendant? Did you not think to look up the patent registry? Did you not think to check the public records of city contracts?" "I assumed," Baxter whispered. "You assumed," the judge mocked. "You assumed that because he is an older black man in a cheap suit that he must be poor. You assumed that because he is quiet he must be weak. You let your bias do your work for you, counselor, and it has led you into a minefield." The judge held up the tax return. "This document shows that Mr. King paid more in taxes last year than your entire law firm grossed in a decade." Baxter looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. He loosened his tie. He could not breathe. "I ask you again, counselor," the judge said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Do you really not know who this man is? Or are you just the most incompetent lawyer to ever stand before my bench?" Baxter did not answer. He could not answer. He sank back into his chair, defeated. The judge turned to look at me. "Mr. King," she said. Her tone changed completely. It was respectful. It was almost apologetic. I sat there. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I reached up and adjusted my tie. It was a small movement, precise, deliberate. I looked at Yvonne. She was staring at me. Her eyes were begging. She was mouthing the word, "please." She wanted me to save her. She wanted me to tell the judge it was all a mistake. She wanted me to be the husband who fixed everything. But that husband was gone. I looked at the judge. "I am just a handyman." "Your Honor," I said. My voice was calm. It filled the room without shouting. "I fix things that are broken, but some things are too broken to fix." The judge nodded slowly. "Indeed, Mr. King," she said. "Indeed." She banged the gavel. "We will take a 15-minute recess," she announced. "I suggest the plaintiff and her counsel use this time to reconsider their position, because when we return, I am going to tear this lawsuit apart piece by piece." The judge stood up and swept out of the room. The courtroom erupted. Reporters were shouting questions. Cameras were flashing. I stood up. Fairbanks stood with me. "Excellent work," Sir Fairbanks whispered. I looked at the chaos. I looked at my family huddled together in terror. "It is not over yet." "Fairbanks," I said, "this was just the introduction. Now we get to the main event." I turned and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea. They looked at me with awe. They looked at me with fear. I walked past Yvonne. She reached out a hand to touch my sleeve. "Thaddeus," she whispered. I did not stop. I did not look down. I kept walking. I walked out of the courtroom and into the hallway. The air tasted sweet. It tasted like victory. But I knew the hardest part was still to come. I had exposed the truth. Now I had to deliver the justice. And justice, unlike revenge, leaves scars on everyone. The recess was not a break. It was a battlefield shift. I stood near the water fountain drinking from a paper cup. Fairbanks was beside me checking his watch. The hallway was buzzing. Reporters were held back by the bailiffs, but their cameras were trained on me like sniper rifles. They wanted a quote. They wanted to know how it felt to be a secret millionaire on trial for being broke. Then I saw her. Yvonne. She was walking toward me. Her step was different. Gone was the righteous victim who had stomped to the witness stand. Gone was the woman who looked at me with disgust. In her place was a creature I barely recognized. She was smiling. It was a terrifying, stretched smile that showed too many teeth. Her hands were clasped in front of her chest in a gesture of pleading. She walked fast, her heels clicking on the linoleum. "Thaddeus," she called out. Her voice was high and sweet. It dripped with a syrup that made my stomach turn. Thaddeus, wait. She reached me. She tried to grab my arm. I took a step back. I looked at her hands. The same hands that had signed the divorce papers. The same hands that had thrown my anniversary gift in the trash. Oh, Thaddeus, she said, breathless. She looked at Fairbanks, then back at me. Can we talk privately? Just for a minute, husband and wife. I am listening, Yvonne, I said. My voice was ice. Say what you have to say. She looked around nervously. She lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Baby, she said. I called her baby for 40 years. Now it sounded like a curse. Baby, I am so sorry. I didn't know. I really didn't know. You have to understand I was scared. Hunter told me we were broke. He told me you were holding us back. He manipulated me, Thaddeus. He twisted my mind. I looked at her. I saw the calculation behind her tears. She wasn't sorry she hurt me. She was sorry she had bet against the house. You called me useless, Yvonne, I said. You sat in that chair 10 minutes ago and told the world I was a parasite. Was that Hunter talking, or was that you? It was the stress, she pleaded. She reached for me again. I dodged her touch. Thaddeus, please. We are a team. We have always been a team. $400,000 a month. Oh my God, Thaddeus, why didn't you tell me we could have been living like kings? We could have traveled. We could have been happy. We were happy, I said. Or I thought we were. Until you decided happiness wasn't enough. Until you decided you needed a Lexus more than you needed a husband. She laughed a nervous titter. The car. That stupid car. I don't care about the car, Thaddeus. I care about you. I care about us. Look, cancel the divorce. Tell the judge we are reconciling. We can walk out of here right now. We can go to a nice dinner. We can start over. It is our money, Thaddeus. Yours and mine. Community property. We built this together. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out my phone. I didn't play a game. I played a memory. I tapped the screen. The audio file from the shed played loud and clear in the hallway, the sound of paper tearing, the sound of a lighter flicking, Hunter's voice tinny but recognizable. What is this garbage, Thaddeus? Do you really think anyone cares about your little drawings of pipes? Then Yvonne's voice from the kitchen recording. He is a burden, Hunter. We need to cut him loose. He is dead weight. I stopped the recording. I looked at Yvonne. Her face had gone gray. You didn't build anything, Yvonne, I said. You tried to burn it down. You let your son burn the original patent for the very technology that pays that royalty check. You watched him do it. You laughed about it. I didn't know what it was, she stammered. It was just old paper. It was your future, I said, and you lit a match to it. I turned away from her. I couldn't look at her anymore. The desperation in her eyes was pathetic. It was the look of a gambler who had lost the rent money and was begging for one more spin of the wheel. Hunter appeared then. He shoved his way through the crowd. He looked sweaty. His tie was crooked. He didn't look pleading like his mother. He looked aggressive. He looked like a cornered rat that had decided to bite. He stepped between me and Yvonne. He puffed out his chest, trying to look intimidating. You think you are smart, old man, Hunter spat. You think this changes anything, it doesn't. Fairbanks stepped forward. He didn't say a word. He just stood there, a wall of calm professionalism. Hunter ignored him. He poked a finger at my chest. Mom is right, he said. This is a community property state. Whatever you made during the marriage belongs to her too. 50-50. That is the law. You can hide the money. You can play your little games, but you cannot cheat the system. He turned to Yvonne, grabbing her shoulders. Don't beg him, Mom. We don't need to beg. We sue. We amend the filing. We ask for half of everything. Half the royalties, half the back pay, half the company. We are going to be rich, Mom. Richer than we ever imagined. He looked back at me, his eyes wild with greed. You played yourself, Thaddeus. You proved you have assets. Now we are going to take them. We are going to take half of that $400,000 every single month. I will never work again. I will spend your money on cars and trips and girls, and there is nothing you can do about it because you put a ring on her finger. Yvonne looked at Hunter. She looked at me. The hope rekindled in her eyes. The greed flared up again, hot and bright. Is that true? She asked Hunter. Yes, it is true, Hunter shouted. He is trapped. He just admitted he is a millionaire in open court. He handed us the keys to the vault. He turned to me, a sneer twisting his face. Thanks for the payday, Dad. I guess you were useful after all. I looked at him. I looked at his sweaty face, his cheap ambition. I felt a profound sadness, not for myself, but for the waste of human potential standing in front of me. I looked at Fairbanks. "It is time," I said. Fairbanks nodded. He adjusted his glasses. He opened his briefcase. He pulled out a single document. It was bound in blue leather. Mr. Baxter Fairbanks called out to the opposing lawyer, who was skulking near the wall trying to disappear. Baxter looked up, startled. "I believe you and your clients should read this before you start spending money you do not have," Fairbanks said. He handed the document to Baxter. Hunter snatched it out of the lawyer's hands. "What is this?" Hunter demanded. "It is the charter for the King Foundation," Fairbanks said, his voice carrying clearly over the murmur of the crowd. Hunter flipped the pages, his hands shaking. "What does this mean?" he demanded. "It means," Fairbanks said, "that Mr. King does not own the patents. He does not own the royalties. He does not own the company." Hunter froze. He looked up. What 30 years ago Fairbanks explained, Mr. King transferred all intellectual property rights and all future revenue streams into an irrevocable blind trust, the King Foundation. It is a charitable organization dedicated to providing clean water infrastructure to developing nations and scholarships for underprivileged engineers. Hunter stared at the document. He could not read the legal jargon, but he understood the tone. "But he gets the money." Hunter shouted. "The mayor said he gets the money. The mayor said the city pays the money." Fairbanks corrected. "He did not say Mr. King keeps it. Mr. King draws a salary as the primary trustee." "And what is that salary?" Yvonne whispered, her voice trembling. Fairbanks smiled. It was a small, shark-like smile. $1 a year, Fairbanks said, plus reasonable living expenses covered by the trust for the maintenance of his duties. $1, Hunter screamed. "That is a lie. Some share. He has $3 million in his pocket." "I saw the check. That check is made out to the King Foundation," Fairbanks said. "Mr. King merely deposits it. He cannot spend it. He cannot withdraw it. And most importantly, it is not a marital asset. It is the property of a non-profit entity." I stepped forward. I looked deep into Hunter's eyes. "You wanted half, Hunter," I asked softly. "Half of $1 is 50 cents. I will give it to you right now if you want." I reached into my pocket. I pulled out 2 quarters. I held them out to him. "Take it," I said. "It is all you are ever going to get from me." Hunter slapped my hand. The quarters hit the floor and rolled away. "No," he screamed. "This is a trick. This is fraud. You are hiding assets. It is ironclad," Baxter whispered, looking over Hunter's shoulder at the document. "It was filed 30 years ago. It is bulletproof. The trust owns everything. He really is a pauper on paper." Yvonne made a sound like a dying animal. She slumped against the wall. "Nothing," she whispered. "We get nothing." "Not nothing," I said. "You get the debt. You get the credit card bills you ran up in my name. You get the mortgage on the house you tried to steal. You get the consequences of your actions." I looked at them one last time. The greedy son, the traitorous wife. They stood in the ruin of their own expectations. They had chased the golden goose and found out it was made of brass. The bailiff opened the courtroom doors. "Court is back in session," he yelled. I buttoned my jacket. "Shall we go, Fairbanks?" I asked. "After you, sir," Fairbanks said. I walked back into the courtroom. I left them in the hallway. I left them with the truth. They had tried to rob a bank that had no doors. They had tried to bleed a stone, and now they were going to drown. The courtroom was silent again, but it was a different kind of silence than before. It was the silence of a predator circling its prey. We had returned from the recess, and the energy in the room had shifted tectonically. The judge sat high on her bench, looking down at the defense table with eyes that promised no mercy. Hunter was sitting next to Baxter. He was trying to look composed. He was trying to look like the aggrieved victim of a complex financial misunderstanding, but his leg was bouncing under the table. It was a nervous tick I had noticed years ago, a vibration that gave away his fear. Mr. Fairbanks called Hunter to the stand. Hunter stood up and adjusted his suit jacket. He walked to the witness box with a swagger that felt forced. He smiled at the jury. It was a salesman's smile. Bright, hollow, fake. He placed his hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. I watched him, and I wondered if the leather of the holy book would burn his skin. Fairbanks approached the stand. He did not smile. He He held a thick file in his hands. Mr. Harrison Fairbanks began using Hunter's last name, which sounded strange in this context. You have stated in previous depositions and to your family that you are a successful real estate developer and venture capitalist. Is that correct? Hunter leaned into the microphone. That is correct, he said, his voice smooth. I manage a portfolio of high-yield assets. I specialize in distressed property acquisition and emerging market equities. It sounded impressive. It sounded like something he had memorized from a brochure. And could you name your firm? Fairbanks asked. I operate under a holding company, Hunter said quickly. HV Global. It is a private equity shell for tax purposes. You understand how these things work. I understand perfectly, Fairbanks said. He opened the file. And how many employees does HV Global currently have? Hunter shifted in his seat. We run a lean operation. I prefer to use independent contractors. It keeps the overhead low. So just you, Fairbanks pressed. Hunter shrugged. Essentially, yes. I am the principal architect of the deals. And what was your gross revenue last year? Fairbanks asked. Hunter looked at Baxter. Baxter looked at the ceiling. Hunter looked back at Fairbanks. It was a volatile year for the market, Hunter said. We focused on acquisition rather than liquidation. On paper, our assets grew significantly, but cash flow was tight. That is why we needed to secure the family home. To protect the investments. To protect the investments, Fairbanks repeated. He pulled a sheet of paper from the file. Mr. Harrison, I have here a record from the State Corporation Commission. It shows that HV Global was dissolved 3 years ago for failure to pay franchise taxes. It also shows that the registered address is a post office box in a strip mall next to a laundromat. Is this your headquarters? Hunter laughed nervously. It was a dry, cracking sound. That is just for mail. I work remotely. The digital economy does not require a skyscraper. Yes. Fairbanks did not laugh. He pulled out another document. And these distressed properties you acquire, Fairbanks said. Can you name one? Just one property you have bought and sold in the last 5 years. Hunter opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked at the ceiling. He looked at the floor. There are confidentiality agreements, he stammered. My clients value their privacy. I cannot discuss specific deals in open court. You cannot discuss them because they do not exist. Fairbanks said, his voice rising slightly. You are not a developer, Mr. Harrison. You are not an investor. You are unemployed. You have not filed a tax return in 4 years. You have no income. You have no assets. You have nothing but a leased car and a suit you bought on your mother-in-law's credit card. Objection! Baxter shouted half-heartedly, badgering the witness. Overruled, the judge said without looking up. She was writing something down. Hunter wiped sweat from his upper lip. He was losing the narrative. He was losing the audience. I am an entrepreneur, he insisted, his voice shrill. You do not understand the hustle. You do not understand how hard it is to build something from nothing. Thaddeus understands. That is why he is jealous. He sat in that shed doing nothing while I was out there trying to make deals. Fairbanks slammed the file onto the railing of the witness box. The sound made everyone jump. Let us talk about those deals, Fairbanks said. Let us talk about the hustle. He turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, what you are seeing is not a businessman. What you are seeing is a fugitive. Fairbanks walked back to his table and picked up a red folder. He held it up for the cameras. This document was provided to us this morning by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Fairbanks announced. It is a sealed indictment from the state of Nevada. Hunter's eyes went wide. He tried to stand up, but his legs seemed to fail him. He slumped back down. Mr. Harrison, Fairbanks said, opening the red folder. Is it not true that there is an active warrant for your arrest in Las Vegas for check fraud and identity theft? Hunter shook his head frantically. That was a misunderstanding. My partner stole that money. I was a victim. And is it not true, Fairbanks continued, relentless as a tide, that you owe $1.2 million to the Emerald Casino, a debt that has been sold to a collection agency with ties to organized crime? Hunter turned pale. He looked at the back of the courtroom as if looking for an exit. I have a payment plan, he whispered. I was going to pay them back. Once the house sold, once we got the money from the old man. Fairbanks turned to the judge. Your Honor, the witness has just admitted his motive. He did not want to sell the house to help his mother-in-law. He wanted to sell the house to save his own life. He is not a loving son-in-law. He is a desperate gambler who viewed my client and his wife as nothing more than a piggy bank to smash open. Yvonne was sitting in the front row. She was staring at Hunter. Her mouth was open. She looked like she was trying to solve a complex math problem and failing. She had believed him. She had believed the stories about the big deals and the bright future. She had bet her marriage on his success. And now she was realizing that the chips were counterfeit. Fairbanks was not done. He had one more card to play, the ace of spades. He walked over to Yvonne. He handed her a piece of paper. Mrs. King Fairbanks said gently, "Do you recognize this document?" Yvonne looked at it. Her hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled. It looks like a loan application," she whispered. "It is a home equity line of credit," Fairbanks said, "taken out against your house 6 months ago, for the full value of the property, $500,000. Yvonne looked up at him confused. "But I never signed this. Thaddeus never signed this. The house is paid off. We have no mortgage." Fairbanks pointed at the signature on the bottom of the page. "Look closely, Mrs. King. That is your signature, or at least a very good forgery of it. And that is Mr. King's signature forged as well. And the notary stamp belongs to a Mr. Paul Hayes, a known associate of Mr. Harrison, who is currently in federal custody." Yvonne looked at Hunter. Hunter was shrinking in his chair. He looked like a child caught standing over a broken vase. "Hunter," she whispered, "what did you do?" "I had to," Hunter cried. His voice broke. "They were going to hurt me, Mom. They said they would break my legs. I needed the money. I was going to pay it back, I swear. The investment was a sure thing. I just needed time." "Where's the money?" Yvonne screamed. "Where is the $500,000? "It is gone," Hunter sobbed. "It is gone. I tried to win it back. I went to the track. I tried to trade crypto. It just disappeared. I am sorry." Fairbanks took the paper back from Yvonne. "The money is gone," Fairbanks said, addressing the court. "And so is the house. The bank has already initiated foreclosure proceedings. You have received no notices because Mr. Harrison had the mail diverted to his post office box. You are not just divorced, Mrs. King. You are homeless. You have no husband. You have no assets. You have no home. And you have a debt of $500,000 that is now in default." The reality of the situation hit Yvonne like a physical blow. The air left her lungs. She had called me useless. She had called me a burden. She had plotted to throw me out of the house I built to make room for this man, this leech, this criminal. She had traded a millionaire for a con artist. She had traded security for ruin. She stood up. Her chair fell backward with a loud crash. "You bastard," she screamed. It was a primal sound, a sound of pure, unadulterated rage. She did not look like a dignified older woman anymore. She looked like a fury. She lunged at Hunter. She leaped over the low wooden railing that separated the gallery from the well of the court. She moved with a speed that defied her age. Hunter tried to stand up to defend himself, but he was tangled in his own lies and his own fear. Yvonne grabbed him by the hair. She pulled his head down and smashed his face into the defense table. "You stole my house," she shrieked. "You stole my life. You liar. You thief." She clawed at his face. She punched him. She was hitting him with 40 years of frustration. She was hitting him for every lie he had told. She was hitting him for making her destroy her marriage. Hunter screamed, "Help me! Get her off me!" Baxter jumped back terrified. He did not try to help. He held his briefcase in front of him like a shield. The bailiffs rushed forward. "Order," the judge shouted, banging her gavel. "Restrain her." It took 2 bailiffs to pull Yvonne off of him. She was kicking and screaming, spitting at Hunter. Hunter was bleeding from his nose. His suit was torn. He was crying, curled up in a ball on the floor. "My house." Yvonne wailed as the bailiffs dragged her back. "My house. You took my house. I sat at my table and watched. I did not move. I did not feel satisfaction. I did not feel joy. I felt a cold, hollow sadness. This was the family I had sacrificed for. This was the woman I had loved, reduced to violence and madness by greed." The judge stood up. Her face was pale. "Clear the courtroom," she ordered. "Everyone out. Medical for the defendant. Take Mrs. King into custody for contempt and assault." The cameras were still rolling. They captured every second of it. They captured the fall of the House of King. They broadcast my wife's madness to the world. I looked at Fairbanks. "Is it done?" I asked. Fairbanks looked at his notes. He looked at the chaos. "Not yet, sir," he said. "We still have one more witness." I looked at Gabrielle. She was sitting in the back corner of the gallery alone. She had watched her husband confess to ruining her life. She had watched her mother attack him. She was shaking. She looked at me. Her eyes were empty. "It is her turn," I said. Fairbanks nodded. "Let us finish it," I said. I stood up. The bailiffs were leading Yvonne out in handcuffs. She looked at me as she passed. Her eyes were black holes. "Thaddeus," she whispered, "help me." I looked at her. I touched the place in my pocket where the check lay. "I cannot help you, Yvonne," I said softly. "You chose him. Now you get to keep him." She screamed as they dragged her through the doors. The sound echoed in the hallway long after she was gone. I sat back down. I waited for the room to clear. The storm had passed, but the wreckage was still burning, and I had to make sure it burned all the way to the ground. The bailiffs had dragged my wife screaming from the courtroom, but the silence she left behind was heavier than her noise. The air in the room was thin. It felt like the moments before a thunderstorm breaks, when the sky turns green and the birds stop singing. The judge sat on her bench, and her face was made of stone. She did not call for a recess. She did not ask for a moment to recover. She looked at the defense table where Hunter sat alone. He was no longer the arrogant young man who had thrown his keys on the dinner table. He was a man watching the walls of his prison cell materialize around him. Mr. Fairbanks stood up. He did not look at Hunter. He looked at the back of the room where a single figure sat huddled in the corner of the gallery. "The defense calls Gabrielle Harrison to the stand," Fairbanks said. Gabrielle stood up. She looked small. She was wearing a gray cardigan that was too big for her, wrapping it around her body as if she were freezing. She walked down the aisle. Her steps were slow and heavy. She passed the empty chair where her mother had been sitting just minutes before. She did not look at it. She walked past the table where her husband sat. Hunter turned his head. He stared at her. His eyes were wide and intense. It was not a look of love. It was a look of warning. He was telepathing a message to her. "Keep your mouth shut. Stick to the script. Remember what I can do to you." Gabrielle climbed into the witness box. She sat down. She looked at the microphone. She looked at her hands, which were twisting a tissue into a tight rope. She did not look at me. Fairbanks approached the stand. He moved gently. He knew that Gabrielle was fragile. He knew that if he pushed too hard, she would shatter into a million pieces, and we would lose the truth forever. "Mrs. Harrison," Fairbanks began, his voice soft, "you have heard the testimony today. You have heard your husband admit to fraud. You have seen your mother arrested. I know this is difficult for you." Gabrielle nodded. She did not speak. "I want to ask you about the document we discussed earlier," Fairbanks continued. "The home equity loan taken out against your father's house. The one with the forged signatures." Gabrielle flinched. She pulled the cardigan tighter. "I did not sign it," she whispered. Her voice was so quiet the court reporter had to lean forward. Fairbanks picked up the document from the evidence table. He walked over to her. He placed it in front of her. "Please look at the witness signature," Mrs. Harrison Fairbanks said. "It says Gabrielle King. That is your maiden name. Is that your handwriting?" Gabrielle looked at the paper. Her eyes filled with tears. She bit her lip. She looked up and her eyes darted to Hunter. Hunter was leaning forward in his chair. His jaw was clenched. He stared at her with the intensity that was almost physical. He was willing her to lie. He was reminding her of the fear. He was reminding her of the debts. I do not know," Gabrielle stammered. "It looks like my writing, but I do not remember signing it." Fairbanks sighed. He knew she was lying. He knew she was terrified. Mrs. Harrison Fairbanks said, "You are under oath. Perjury is a felony. If you lie to protect a man who has already admitted to ruining your family, you will go to prison with him. Is that what you want?" Gabrielle began to cry. It was a soft, hopeless sound. "He told me it was just insurance," she sobbed. "He told me it was just paperwork for the business." "Who told you that?" Fairbanks asked. Hunter stood up. "Objection, Your Honor," he shouted. "He is badgering his own witness. She is confused. She is under duress." "Sit down, Mr. Harrison," the judge barked. Her gavel slammed down. "One more outburst, and you will join your mother-in-law in the holding cell." Hunter sat down slowly. He ran a hand through his hair. He looked at Gabrielle and mouthed the word, "Stop." I sat at my table and watched my daughter. I saw the war being fought inside her soul. She was torn between the husband she had chosen and the father she had betrayed. She was drowning in shame. She felt that she had gone too far, that she could never come back. She thought I hated her. She thought I saw her as an enemy. I needed her to know that was not true. I leaned forward. I caught her eye. She looked at me terrified. She expected to see anger. She expected to see the judgment of the chairman. But I did not give her the chairman. I gave her the father. I did not smile because there was nothing to smile about. But I softened my eyes. I looked at her with a gaze that held all the memories of the scraped knees and the bedtime stories. I looked at her with a strictness that demanded the truth, but a warmth that promised safety. I slowly raised my right hand and placed it over my heart. It was a signal. When she was a little girl and she was scared of the dark or nervous about a school play, I would do that. It meant, I am here. It meant, be brave. It meant, I love you no matter what. Gabrielle saw the gesture. Her breath hitched. Her eyes widened. She stared at my hand over my heart. She looked at my face. She saw that I was not her executioner. I was her harbor. She took a deep breath. She stopped looking at Hunter. She turned her body toward the jury. She sat up straighter. The tears were still falling, but her chin went up. He made me do it, Gabrielle said. Her voice was clear. It rang through the courtroom. Fairbanks stepped back. He gave her the room. Who made you do it, Mrs. Harrison? He asked. Hunter, she said. She pointed at him. She did not look at him, but she pointed straight at his chest. Hunter made me do it. He brought the papers home 6 months ago. He told me he was in trouble. He told me men were going to hurt him if he did not pay them back. And the signatures, Fairbanks asked. He made me practice, Gabrielle said. The words poured out of her now like water from a broken dam. He made me sit at the kitchen table for hours. He had Dad's old letters and checks. He made me trace Dad's signature over and over again until I could do it perfectly. He screamed at me when I got it wrong. He threw a coffee cup at the wall. He said if I did not do it, he would leave me. He said he would leave me with nothing. Hunter slammed his fist on the table. You lying bitch, he screamed. The judge stood up. Bailiffs, she shouted. But Gabrielle did not stop. She was screaming now too, shouting over the noise of the courtroom, letting out the poison that had been killing her for months. He told me Mom was stupid, she cried. He told me Dad was a useless old man who deserved to die broke. He laughed about it. He laughed while he spent your money on watches and hotels. He made me call you and say those horrible things, Dad. He was standing right there holding the phone, squeezing my arm until it bruised. He wrote the script. He made me choose him. She collapsed onto the railing of the witness box, burying her face in her hands. I am so sorry, she wailed. I am so sorry, Daddy. I was so scared. I was so weak. The truth hung in the air, heavy and absolute. She had confessed to forgery, but she had exposed the mastermind. She had broken the chain of control. Hunter was standing now. His face was purple with rage. He looked like a cornered animal. He looked at the bailiffs approaching him. He looked at the judge. He looked at me. He realized it was over. The house was gone. The money was gone. His wife was gone. His freedom was gone. He snapped. It is not my fault, he screamed, his voice cracking. It is her fault. She wanted the lifestyle. She wanted the clothes. She is just as greedy as her mother. 2 bailiffs grabbed him by the arms. Hunter struggled. He kicked out, hitting the defense table. Get off me, he shouted. Do you know who I am? I am a businessman. I have rights. You are a criminal, Mr. Harrison, the judge said, her voice cutting through his screams like a knife. And you are under arrest. The bailiffs spun him around. They slammed him face first onto the table. I heard the air leave his lungs in a grunt. They pulled his arms behind his back. The handcuffs clicked. It was a sharp metallic sound that signaled the end of the war. Hunter lifted his head. His nose was bleeding from hitting the table. He looked at me. His eyes were wild. You did this. He spat blood flying from his lips. You ruined everything, you old dinosaur. You should have just died. You should have just died in that shed. I stood up. I walked over to the railing that separated us. I looked down at him. I did not ruin you, Hunter, I said quietly. I just turned on the lights. You ruined yourself in the dark. The bailiffs hauled him up. He was crying now. The bravado was gone, leaving only a pathetic, weeping boy. Gabrielle, help me, he begged, looking toward the witness stand. Tell them to stop. We can fix this. I love you, baby. I love you. Gabrielle slowly lifted her head. She looked at her husband. She looked at the man who had hit her, the man who had forced her to rob her father. I don't know you, she whispered. Hunter screamed as they dragged him away. He screamed curses. He screamed threats. He screamed until the heavy doors slammed shut behind him, cutting off the noise. The courtroom was quiet again. The only sound was Gabrielle weeping softly on the stand. The judge sat down. She took a deep breath. She looked at me. She looked at Gabrielle. "This court is adjourned for sentencing," she said softly. I walked to the witness stand. I opened the little gate. I walked up the steps. Gabrielle looked up at me. She flinched, expecting a blow. I reached out. I did not hit her. I took her hand. It was cold and shaking. I pulled her up. "Come on, Gabrielle," I said. "Let us go home." She looked at me confused. "I don't have a home," she whispered. "You have my home," I said. "You have always had my home." I led her down the steps. I led her past the cameras. I led her out of the ruin she had helped create and into the light of the afternoon. She was broken. She was guilty. But she was my daughter. And unlike Hunter, unlike Yvonne, she had found the courage to speak the truth when it mattered most. That was something I could work with. That was something I could fix. I put my arm around her shoulders and we walked toward the car. The King family was dead, but Thaddeus and Gabrielle were still standing. And that would have to be enough. The gavel struck the mahogany block. The sound was sharp and final. It echoed through the courtroom, clearing the air of the chaos that had consumed the last hour. Hunter was gone, dragged away in chains. Gabrielle sat on the bench, her head in her hands, weeping silently. Yvonne sat alone at the plaintiff table. She looked small. She looked like a woman who had woken up in a house that had burned to the ground and was trying to sweep up the ash with a broken broom. The judge adjusted her robes. She looked at Yvonne. There was no pity in her eyes, only the cold calculation of the law. "Mrs. King," the judge began, her voice steady and authoritative. "You came into this court seeking a divorce on the grounds of financial neglect. You sought an equitable division of assets. You claimed your husband was a burden." Yvonne looked up. Her eyes were red. She opened her mouth to speak, perhaps to beg, but the judge held up a hand. "Silence," the judge ordered. "I have heard enough from you. Now you will listen to me." The judge opened the file in front of her. "I am granting the divorce," she stated. "The marriage of 40 years is hereby dissolved. However, regarding the division of assets, the court finds that the plaintiff has acted with unclean hands. You participated in a conspiracy to defraud your husband. You allowed your son-in-law to forge signatures. You attempted to manipulate the legal system to declare a competent man insane." Yvonne flinched with every sentence. Therefore, the judge continued. "The court rules in favor of the defendant on all financial matters. You are not entitled to alimony. You are not entitled to a share of the King Foundation assets, as they are held in an irrevocable trust that predates your claims. You leave this marriage with exactly what you brought into it, which, based on the testimony I have heard, is nothing but debt." Yvonne gasped. "But the house," she whispered. "The house is mine. We paid off the mortgage years ago. It is marital property. I need a place to live." The judge looked at Fairbanks. "Mr. Fairbanks," she said, "please clarify the status of the marital residence for the record." Fairbanks stood up. He walked to the center of the room. He held a document in his hands. It was a deed. It was stamped with the seal of the county recorder. "Your Honor," Fairbanks said, "the house at 42 Oak Street is no longer marital property." Yvonne stood up. "That is a lie," she screamed. "It is my house. I planted the roses. I chose the paint." "Sit down," Mrs. King, Fairbanks said. His voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. He turned to the judge. 6 months ago, Mr. Hunter Harrison took out a fraudulent home equity line of credit against the property for $500,000, Fairbanks explained. He defaulted on that loan 3 weeks ago. The bank initiated immediate foreclosure proceedings. They sent notices. Mr. Harrison intercepted them. Yvonne looked at Gabrielle. Gabrielle nodded slowly, confirming the betrayal. "The bank intended to auction the house on the courthouse steps this morning," Fairbanks continued. "However, the King Foundation intervened." Yvonne's eyes lit up. A spark of hope returned to her face. She looked at me. She smiled a desperate, trembling smile. "You saved it," she breathed. "Oh, Thaddeus, I knew you would not let us lose the house. I knew you still cared. Thank you. Thank you for paying it off. We can start over. I promise I will make it up to you." I looked at her. I saw the delusion taking root again. She thought I was still the provider. She thought I was still the safety net she could fall into after she pushed me off the cliff. Fairbanks cleared his throat. "You misunderstand, Mrs. King," Fairbanks said coldly. "Mr. King did not pay off the mortgage personally. The King Foundation purchased the distressed debt from the bank. The foundation exercised its right to foreclose." The smile froze on Yvonne's face. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means," Fairbanks said, "that the legal title of the house has been transferred. The owner of the property is no longer Thaddeus King or Yvonne King. The owner is the King Foundation, a charitable organization." Yvonne looked confused. "But that is Thaddeus," she insisted. "He is the foundation. It is the same thing." "I can still live there. He can let me live there." I stood up then. I buttoned my jacket. I walked over to the railing. I looked my ex-wife in the eye. "The foundation has strict bylaws, Yvonne," I said. "It cannot use its assets for the private benefit of any individual, not even me, especially not you." "But you own it," she pleaded. "You can change the rules." "I do not own it," I said. "I serve it." And the board of directors met this morning. We voted on the future of the property. I pulled a piece of paper from my pocket. It was the minutes of the meeting. "We decided that the house is too large for a single occupant," I said. "And since the previous occupants used it as a headquarters for fraud and conspiracy, we felt it needed to be purified." "Purified," Yvonne whispered. "Yes," I said. "The foundation is donating the structure to the city." "Donating it," she gasped. Fairbanks stepped in. "The King Foundation has gifted the property at 42 Oak Street to the Atlanta Public Library System," he announced. "Construction crews are scheduled to arrive on Monday to begin the conversion. The walls will be knocked down. The bedrooms where you plotted against your husband will become reading rooms. The kitchen where you threw his gift in the trash will become a computer lab for underprivileged children." Yvonne collapsed into her chair. She looked like a puppet whose strings had been cut. "A library," she mumbled. "You are turning my home into a library." "I am turning it into something useful," I corrected her. "For 40 years that house was filled with your complaints and your greed. Now it will be filled with books. It will be filled with knowledge. Maybe if you had spent more time reading and less time shopping, we would not be here today." The judge banged the gavel one last time. "The ruling stands," she said. "The property belongs to the foundation. Mrs. King, you have no legal claim to the residence." "And when do I have to leave?" Yvonne asked, her voice hollow. Fairbanks looked at his watch. "The transfer of title was recorded at 9 a.m. this morning," he said. "Technically, you are trespassing right now. However, out of consideration for your age and the circumstances, the foundation is granting you a grace period." "How long?" Yvonne asked. "A month. 2 months." Fairbanks shook his head. 24 hours, he said. 24 hours, Yvonne shrieked. "That is impossible. I have 40 years of things in that house. I have furniture. I have clothes. I have dishes." "Then I suggest you start packing," Fairbanks said. "At noon tomorrow, the locks will be changed. The security team will secure the perimeter. Anything left inside will be considered abandoned property and donated to the Salvation Army." Yvonne looked at me. She looked at Gabrielle. Gabrielle was not looking at her mother. She was looking at her hands. "Gabrielle, help me," Yvonne begged. "Tell him he cannot do this. Tell him we need time." Gabrielle stood up. She walked over to the defense table. She picked up her purse. "We do not have time," Mom Gabrielle said softly. "We wasted all our time lying." She walked over to me. She stopped. She did not try to hug me. She knew she had not earned that yet. "I will help her pack, Dad," she said. "We will be out by noon." "Where will you go?" I asked. Gabrielle shrugged. "A shelter, maybe. Or a motel if we can scrape together enough cash. It does not matter. We have to start over. From zero." I nodded. It was the right answer. "Good luck, Gabrielle," I said. She turned and took her mother by the arm. "Come on, Mom," she said. "We have work to do." Yvonne resisted. No, I am not leaving. This is my house. Thaddeus, you cannot do this to me. I am your wife." "I was your husband," I said. Past tense. "Now I am just the landlord, and you are being evicted." The bailiff stepped forward. He put a hand on Yvonne's elbow. "It is time to go, ma'am," he said. Yvonne looked around the courtroom. She saw the cameras, she saw the reporters. She realized this was the final scene of her performance. And she realized she was not the hero. She was the villain who lost everything. She let out a sob that was real. It was the sound of a woman realizing she was going to die alone and poor because she had been too greedy to be grateful. She let Gabrielle lead her away. They walked down the aisle. The crowd watched them go in silence. They were ghosts walking out of a life they had destroyed. I watched them leave. I watched the doors swing shut behind them. The courtroom was empty except for Fairbanks and the judge. The judge stood up. She looked at me. "Mr. King," she said, "I hope you find what you are looking for." I bowed my head. "I think I already have, Your Honor," I said. I turned to Fairbanks. "Is the car ready?" I asked. "Yes, sir," Fairbanks said. "It is waiting at the curb." "Good," I said. "Take me to the hardware store." "The hardware store, sir?" Fairbanks asked, surprised. "Yes," I said. I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had felt in months. "I have a new idea for a water filtration system, and I need some copper wire." I walked out of the courtroom. I walked out into the sun. I was 70 years old. I was single. I was a billionaire. And for the first time in 40 years, I was free. The house was gone. The family was gone. But I was still standing, and I had work to do. It was exactly noon on the following day when I turned my old Ford truck onto the street I had lived on for 30 years. The sun was high and bright, casting sharp shadows that offered no place to hide. The neighborhood was quiet, but it was the kind of quiet that hides 1,000 watching eyes. I knew that behind every curtain and every blind my neighbors were watching. They had seen the police cars, they had seen the news vans, and now they were watching the final act of the tragedy. The house looked the same as it always did. The bricks were still red, the lawn was still green, but there was a heavy silver chain wrapped around the front gate. A sign posted on the lawn read, "Property of the King Foundation, future site of the community library." It was a tombstone for the life I had tried to build, and a monument to the future I was creating. On the sidewalk just outside the gate sat a pile of luggage. It was a chaotic mound of Louis Vuitton bags and cardboard boxes. The expensive leather suitcases looked ridiculous sitting on the dirty concrete. They looked like artifacts from a fallen civilization, and sitting on top of the largest suitcase was Yvonne. She was wearing the same dress she had worn to court yesterday. It was wrinkled now, stained with sweat and tears. She had lost one of her shoes. I did not know where it was, and she did not seem to care. Her hair, which she had always kept perfectly coiffed, was loose and tangled around her face. She looked 20 years older than she had just 24 hours ago. She looked like a ghost haunting her own grave. Gabrielle was gone, true to her word. She had taken her few possessions and left early in the morning, heading for a women's shelter downtown to start her life from scratch. She had chosen the hard path of redemption. Yvonne, however, had chosen to wait. She had sat on that curb for 4 hours, refusing to believe that the end had truly come. She was waiting for a savior. She was waiting for the man she had called useless to come and make her useful again. I pulled the truck up to the curb. The engine rumbled with a familiar heavy sound. It was the sound of work. It was the sound of reliability. Yvonne's head snapped up when she heard it. Her eyes widened. A desperate, frantic hope flooded her face. She stood up, stumbling slightly on her one shoeless foot. She smoothed her dress. She tried to fix her hair. She put on a smile that was so broken, it was painful to look at. She thought I was coming to take her back. She thought I was coming to drive her to a hotel to buy her dinner, to tell her it was all a bad dream. She thought she still had power over me. I put the truck in park. I did not turn off the engine. I stepped out. The door creaked as I opened it. I stood there in my work boots and my flannel shirt. I was not wearing the Italian suit today. I was wearing the clothes of the man I truly was, the man who built things. "Thaddeus," she cried out. Her voice was raspy from crying. "You came. I knew you would come. Oh, thank God, Thaddeus, take me. Yes, take. Away from here. The neighbors are staring. It is humiliating. Please just put these bags in the truck. Let us go somewhere, anywhere." She reached for her suitcase, expecting me to grab it, expecting me to serve her as I always had. I did not move. I stayed by the truck door, my hand resting on the warm metal. "I am not here to take you anywhere, Yvonne," I said. My voice was calm. It was not angry. It was just final. She froze. Her hands hovered over the handle of the suitcase. The smile faltered, trembling at the corners. "What do you mean?" she asked, breathless. "You have to take me. I am your wife, Thaddeus. I am your wife of 40 years. You cannot leave me on the street like a dog. I have nowhere to go. Hunter is in jail. Gabrielle abandoned me. You are all I have." You are not my wife, I corrected her. You are my ex-wife. The judge made that very clear. And you do not have me. You lost me the night you threw my gift in the trash. You lost me the night you let your son burn my patent. You lost me every single day. You chose greed over gratitude. But I am sorry, she wailed, tears streaming down her face again, making tracks through her ruined makeup. I am so sorry, Thaddeus. I learned my lesson. I swear I did. I will be good. I will live in the shed with you. I do not care about the money anymore. I just want you. I reached into the pocket of my shirt. I pulled out a small wooden box. It was simple, unadorned, made of pine. It was not the box I had given her at the restaurant. That one was gone, stained by lobster sauce and coffee grounds. This was a new box, one I had put together in the shop this morning. I walked over to her. She looked at the box. Her eyes lit up. The greed was reflexive. It was a muscle memory. She thought it was money. She thought it was a key. She thought it was a diamond. For me, she whispered, reaching out with trembling hands. Yes, I said. It is the last thing I will ever give you. She took the box. She opened it with frantic fingers. She looked inside. Her face fell. The light died in her eyes. Inside the box, resting on a bed of simple cotton, was the wooden necklace, the African blackwood pendant with the silver inlay, the one I had carved by hand, the one I had sanded for 40 hours, the one I had fished out of the garbage can while she slept. She stared at it. She looked up at me, confused, disappointed. It is the necklace, she said. Her voice was flat. It is, I said. I cleaned it. I polished it. It is just as beautiful as it was the night I gave it to you. But there is a difference now. What difference? She asked, looking at the piece of wood as if it were a dead insect. The difference is that now you know what it is worth, I said. You thought it was trash because it did not sparkle. You thought it was garbage because it did not come with a receipt. Now you know that the man who made it is a billionaire. You know that the hands that carved it built this city. Suddenly this wood is valuable to you. Not because of the love I put into it, but because of the man I turned out to be. I do not understand. She wept. Why are you giving this to me? Because it belongs to you, I said. It represents our marriage. Yvonne, it was beautiful once. It was strong. It was built with care and patience, but you threw it away. You treated it like refuse. And even though I pulled it out of the trash, even though I cleaned it off, it will always smell like garbage to me. I took a step back. Keep it, I said. Sell it if you can. Put it in a museum. Burn it. I do not care. It is yours now, just like your life. It is exactly what you made it. Thaddeus, please, she screamed, grabbing at my shirt. Do not do this. I have no money. I have no home. What am I supposed to do? I looked at her hands clutching my flannel. I looked at her desperate face. I remembered the woman I had met 40 years ago, the woman who had smiled at me when I had nothing. I wondered where she had gone. I wondered if she had ever existed, or if she was just a character played by a very talented actress. You are a survivor, Yvonne, I said gently, removing her hands from my shirt. You survived poverty once, you can do it again, you have your health, you have your freedom, and you have a very expensive lesson. Use it. I turned around. I walked back to my truck. I did not run. I did not look like a man fleeing a fire. I looked like a man leaving a job site after a long, hard day. Thaddeus, she screamed behind me, her voice cracking, breaking into 1,000 pieces. Thaddeus, come back. I opened the truck door. I climbed into the cab. The seat was worn and comfortable. It smelled of old coffee and sawdust. It smelled like home. I looked in the rearview mirror one last time. Yvonne had collapsed onto the sidewalk. She was clutching the wooden box to her chest, rocking back and forth, crying into the uncaring air. The neighbors were coming out onto their porches now, not to help, but to watch. The show was over. The curtain had fallen. I put the truck in gear. I released the brake. I did not feel guilt. I did not feel regret. I felt lighter. I felt as if a heavy coat I had been wearing for decades had finally been taken off. I drove down the street. I drove past the park where I had tried to save Gabrielle. I drove past the grocery store where I had used my emergency money. I drove past the boundaries of the neighborhood that had been my prison. The road ahead was open. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. It was a beautiful evening. I reached for the phone on the passenger seat. I dialed Fairbanks. "Sir." Fairbanks answered. His voice was warm. "It is done," I said. "Did she take the necklace?" Fairbanks asked. "She took it," I said. "She did not understand it, but she took it. And now, sir." "Where to?" I looked at the horizon. I saw the silhouette of the water treatment plant in the distance. I saw the bridges connecting the city. I saw the grid of lights flickering on. "I am going to the lab, Fairbanks," I said. "I have a new idea for a filtration system, one that removes toxins at the molecular level. I think I finally figured out how to make it work." "Excellent. Sir," Fairbanks said, "I will have the team ready for you in the morning." I hung up the phone. I turned on the radio. It was playing blues, a slow, steady rhythm that matched the beating of my heart. I was 70 years old. I was alone. I had no wife. I had no son. But as the wind rushed through the open window, I realized I had everything I needed. I had my mind. I had my hands. And for the first time in a very long time, I had my future. I pressed the gas pedal. The old truck surged forward, eager to work. I drove into the night, leaving the ruins of the past behind me. The rearview mirror was empty. The road ahead was full, and that was enough. That was everything. The king was dead. Long live the king. They say silence is golden. But I learned that sometimes silence is just permission for abuse. For decades, I mistook my endurance for strength, and my sacrifice for love. I thought if I gave them everything, they would eventually see my value. I was wrong. You cannot build a home on a foundation of disrespect, no matter how skilled the architect is. True worth isn't found in a patent or a bank account. It is found in the boundaries you set. If someone requires you to be small so they can feel big, they do not belong in your life. Walking away wasn't quitting. It was the most important project I ever completed. If you have ever had to cut off a toxic relationship to save yourself, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of justice and redemption.